Hey, peace to everybody joining in. Peace, peace. Under heathens, not Christians. Better? Is it better that we're living underneath secularists than we are Christians? I want to talk about this a little bit because I'm talking about even the so-called Christians on here because from what I'm understanding, that if we were living underneath them, they would be torturing and killing us and they would be burning us alive. That seems to be what was really going on here. The heathens don't seem to be that bad nowadays, do they? Like, you're getting freedom of speech, you're getting to practice your religion. You're getting to do things like talk to people of other religions. You're able to have interfaith relationships and conversations and live in communities that you can talk to people. But if we lived under Christians, so-called Christians, and when I say Christians, so-called Christians, I'm talking about what we call today Protestants or Catholicism. I'm using the word Christian for a reason. Now, how would it be if we were living under them today? Do we have to guess? I don't think we have to guess. I think we've seen that experiment play out, and I think we saw a bunch of young women get drowned and burned alive and accused as witches. I think we saw a bunch of people that were hung from trees and castrated. I think we saw a bunch of natives that were ultimately committed genocide against them because they weren't of the same religion, same faith, didn't want to bow down. I think we see the most gross, detest tortures, oppressive regimes that we've ever seen underneath the auspices of what they call Christianity. Okay. Now, I want to talk about some of this stuff we see when we talk about Christians today. Because, see, my problem with all this is I'm listening to these Christians in other rooms and they're saying things like, you're a heretic to people. That person right there would have got you killed. They would have got you killed. I heard a person say, well, if we were in the dark century, you would have already been killed as a heretic for this. Yeah, and they would have been the one that got you hemmed up and got you killed. See, they're murderers. You're playing games with people out here. They ain't, look, these people, they don't have no power now. That's why they're talking to you like you're some type of person, but you're not a person to these people. If they were empowered, they would do things that you wouldn't believe a human being would do to another human being. They would treat you less than a dog, than vermin out of the gutter. And I don't think people get this. So I just want to start this conversation today. Is being under heathens, not Christians, better? And I just have to say personally, I think that the secular society we live under would be much better than living under these so-called Christians. And I want to read a little bit about what these Christians did in America. Okay. I want to talk about what these Christians did in America when they tortured and killed people and set people on fire. Oh my God. Does everybody understand this? That these were a violent race, group, tribe, religious sect of people. Christianity and violence. Christians have had a diverse attitudes towards violence and nonviolence over time, both currently and historically. There have been both four attitudes towards violence and war and four resulting practices of them within Christianity. What I want to talk about, right, is this holy war crusades, right? In the Roman Empire, the early church adopted the nonviolent concept of just war. The belief that limited uses of war were acceptable originated in the writings of earlier non Christian Roman and Greek thinkers such as Cicero and Plato. So you see, this guy Cicero and Plato, this is where this originated from. What originated? What originated? Look, the concept of just war, holy war, the belief that limited uses of war were acceptable originated in the earliest writings of non-Christian Roman and Greek thinkers, such as Cicero and Plato. Later, this theory was adopted by Christian thinkers such as St. Augustine, who, like other Christians, borrowed much of the just war concept from Roman law and the works of the Roman writers like Cicero. Even though, quote, just war, end quote, holy war concept was widely accepted early on, warfare was not regarded as virtuous activity. And expressing concern for the salvation of those who killed enemies in battle, regardless of the cause for which they fought, was common. Concepts such as holy war, whereby fighting itself might be considered a spiritual meritorious act, did not emerge before the 11th century. Did not emerge before the 11th century. These people, these Christians today are Romans. They're Roman murderers. Jesus Christ never taught nobody to gather together into no type of artillery war machine and to pick up staves and spears and weapons and arrows and pistols and guns and grenades and do you in. Did Jesus teach that? But these people took a concept from Plato and Cicero, and then they took that concept from Plato and from Cicero, and St. Augustine adopted this, put this in writings, and now you have these people coding to a concept that you see to where they justified themselves killing other people in the name of Christ. They justified themselves murdering people, oftentimes without a real trial at all. They justified killing these people, murdering people, you see, based upon this information. Wasn't from the Bible, you see. Now, as we talk about Christian violence, because Christians are a violent people, very violent. And I'm not talking about the Christians in the Bible, the followers of Christ. I'm talking about Protestants and so-called Catholics and whatever else in between that fit the shoe fits wear it. They're a violent, ignorant, barbaric, hateful, envious people. They're a very wicked people. In the wars, the attitudes towards military before Constantine, the study of Christian participation in military service and in pre-Constantine era has been highly contested and has generated a great deal of literature. Though most of the 20th century, a consensus was formed around Adolf von Harnack's view that the early church was pacifist. That during the second and third centuries, a growing accommodation of a military service occurred, and by the time of Constantine, a just war, quote unquote, holy war ethic had arisen. Oh, I wonder. So now Constantine comes. Now all of a sudden, Christians want to bathe in blood. You see, now Christians want to kill people because Constantine comes around. Well, what happened? I thought they were pacifists. I thought they didn't entangle themselves in the affairs of this world. I thought that these were just and righteous men who didn't do anything outside of the counsel of the Almighty, sure wouldn't do anything without a proper procedure according to law in the first place. And we can read in the scripture where a man did something that was worthy of death, and the infliction of punishment they put upon this person was excommunication from the body of Christ. Now we see this bastard Constantine come around, and what happens is he is a Roman leader. And what does he need? He needs military power to crush and hurt people, to kill people's families, to kill people's children, to enslave people. He needs power. So who's going to be in his military prowess? Christians, so-called Christians. Is it better to live under heathens or Christians? Because when Christians come into power, my God, when the Catholic Church gets power and they're able to exercise what we call ecclesiastical prowess, well, they begin to torture people. I mean, horrible tortures. I mean, doing things to your physical body that nobody should be doing to your physical body ever, is what they're doing. You know, as I talk about this, right? Just war theory is a doctrine. Just war theory is a doctrine of military ethics of Roman philosophical and Catholic origin. Let me say that again. Just war theory is a doctrine of military ethics of Roman philosophical and Catholic origin, studied by moral theologians, ethicists, and international policy makers. What did that say? International policy makers. that holds that a conflict can and ought to meet the criteria of philosophical, religious, or political justice, provided it follows certain conditions. The concept of justification for war under certain conditions goes back to at least two Roman and Greek thinkers such as Cicero and Plato. There they go again. These people, matter of fact, we probably need to stop calling them Christians. Maybe we should just call them something like Plaotins. Plaotins or whatever you would call them, Platonicans or whatever they are, because they follow Plato. And that's why you got your Christians, third, yes, third. And they pick up a gun and blow your brains out. They'll pick up a gun, shoot him. Yes, third, yes, third. That's your Christian today. You understand? God, y'all gotta understand how dumb these people are. They're dangerous people. So is it better to live under heathens and not Christians? Well, like I said, living here underneath the heathens, we can practice at least what we can at least practice to a certain extent before they try to discombobulate things. Like I said, we can have freedom of speech. I'm sitting here talking to you now, aren't I not? This whole thing isn't shut down. You see, we're able to have some type of liberty in order to at least publish, promote, preach the doctrine of the cross, whatever else we'd like to do, and converting people into our faith. This wouldn't be happening under Christians. Under Christians, we know how that experiment goes. You are getting burned alive because you don't believe in the Holy Trinity. And don't think it would be any different today. I think that being underneath Christians or living underneath Christians would be like living in a real reality of hell. I think living under Christians would be the manifestation of hell on earth. And I can read about what it was like. That's why I think it was hell on earth. They called it look at this. Look at this stuff. Well, hold up, sir. I got to take a second. But yeah, this is what the conversation is about. If y'all can share the room, if you're not able to share the room, you can come up on stage and ping people because in these types of rooms, I think it's like that. You don't have to speak, but in any case, if anybody wants to get involved, you know what I'm saying? I'm going to fall back for about a minute or two and I'll get back into this conversation. I'm going to try to leave this room open. I know people don't like to come in this room. They're scared of Eliyahu. I know. I know. I know. They come in here and they walk away feeling like their faith is in shambles. I know. I mean, they might not come in here because the rooms are on replay. I know. But this is the attitude I have towards things. I want to vocalize these things because, I've been seeing these little pastors creep around here. I was listening to a room earlier and they were talking about, well, you're a heretic. And if you had been in the dark centuries, this, that, and the third, yeah, they're right. And they would do it to you. They would do it to you. Uh-huh. Don't think that Al or Kevin G wouldn't be standing on the side as you got the most horrendous things done to you. Don't think they wouldn't. Hey, peace, brothers and sisters. Yeah, I'm gonna fall back for a minute.
Shalom, shalom, fam. How y'all doing?
Peace.
Another great topic, concerning the reality of, what we do gather from the text. Like what's the most high's view of these things?
Did you catch?
How does
Did you
it
catch what I was teaching, Talmud? That Christians were pacifists in the first and second and into the third centuries. And Augustine
mm,
was the one who reached back to Plato and this guy named Cicero and adopted the concept of what's called just war. And
mm,
this was facilitated by Constantine in order to bring Christians into his army to become murderers and kill people. And that's where the Crusades and stuff, while Christians were fighting wars.
mm,
Whereas beforehand, brother, they didn't have no concept of killing nobody and they weren't allowed to. Constantine changed that for them. And so basically, what I'm making this room about is it better to live under heathens, such like Americans, or under Christians, like Catholics and Protestants? And I'm thinking that living under Protestants and Catholics would be hell on earth, brother. And I think we're very fortunate not to be under these people.
mm. Yeah. I think that there's some merit to that because the way I view it is that for the longest time the world was under quote unquote Christians, and things began to shift in the 60s to a degree. And so now I kind of look at the ruling class to a certain extent as Christians. You see, up until the 60s, they were pretty much one and the same as far as the heathens.
Well,
You see,
that's right. But look at what happened before the '60s. It was racism, it was castration, it was hanging, it was witch burning. After the '60s, like you said, when the Christians got just deposed, that I mean, yeah, homosexuals and all this other crazy stuff popped up. But is there not? What I'm saying is there not less? I mean, good God, look at what they were doing. Now
yeah,
these heathens are a little bit too loose. They're too out of control.
yeah,
But my God, we wouldn't be alive, Talmud. We wouldn't be speaking these things right now underneath them other people.
yeah, yeah. And in that, what we're looking at is a paradigm shift. You know, Christianity basically got to a point to where it was no longer useful for the ruling class in the 60s. So in that, they changed gears. It was a pendulum shift. They didn't like how they were being portrayed by the world media, in terms of a country that was positing itself to be world police, was being aired out, by the media in terms of things that were going on in places like Selma, Alabama, in terms of all the different massacres and things of that nature that took place throughout this country, that not only in the South, but in the Midwest, the North, the East. You see what I'm saying? The West, things that were going on everywhere in this country. So they got to a point to where they disassociated themselves with a lot of the, I would say, fundamental Christian principles that had brought most of the known world under a colonist, empire or a colonist regime. You see that did things like what you're speaking to: cut people's hands off, cut people's feet off, fed or used children as alligator bait, used black skin and things of that nature to uh, to seal chairs, you know, to seal purses, to seal outer coverings of shoes and stuff like that, to fill couches up and things of that nature with cushion as far as black hair is concerned. You see, yes, you can definitely see the difference in when Christianity was in power in this country. You see, uh, up into the 60s, until they disassociated themselves with that narrative and they had to rebrand themselves, you see, in effort to save face in the eyes of the world public. And I
And
yield.
all that changed just through the introduction of new ideas. People are almost like computers that need upgrades, and they're subject to the only information that they've had downloaded into them. I mean, the arising of new ideas changes the fabric of society and the way of people's thinkings and the lives they want to live. It gives people options which they didn't consider or even know before, almost like a door that was in the room they couldn't see. Now, I want to talk about these so-called Christians. Now, 29 people were executed as Judaizers between 1571 and 1700. Okay, all right, this is just the information we have available. Executed. And we know what a Judaizer is. It's somebody practicing the Jewish religion. Between 1571 and 1700, out of 324 people who were prosecuted for practicing the Jewish religion, there's a painting I'm looking at of them burning people alive in front of children. In the Portuguese Inquisition, the major targets were people who had converted from Judaism to Catholicism, the conversos, also known as New Christians or Moranos, because they were suspected of secretly practicing Judaism. Many of these people were originally Spanish Jews who had left Spain for Portugal. The number of victims of the Portuguese institution is estimated to be around 40,000 or 40,000. Oh, and by the way, underneath the so-called what you're saying too, Talmud, the Tuskegee experiment was under. The Tuskegee experiment went up until the 1970s while they were injecting the black populace with syphilis and let it ravage their body to pieces and let it go like this, brother. That was your so-called Christians. Now, those Christians are crazy. Catholics go and inoculate people in Africa with AIDS, HIV, and anything else that they want to try on people. That why are they doing this? These Catholics and these Christians do this stuff. They like to put diseases in people's bodies. They're not a clean people. The Christians who came over here with chicken pox and all kinds of stuff, and they threw it over what they taught me when I was a child, over fences onto where the Indians were sequestered so that they could be ravaged by diseases. Them are Christians, okay? Them are your so-called Christians. Now, it says here, the particular focus of the Spanish and Portuguese Inquisitions was the issue of Jewish Anonism and Muslim converts to Catholicism, partly because these minority groups were more numerous in Spain and Portugal than they were in many other parts of Europe, and partly because they were often considered suspect due to the assumption that they had secretly reverted to their former religions. Paranoid. These Christians were paranoid. If they thought that these people had converted back unto the ways that they were born into, whether Jew or Muslim, they would kill you. The Goa Inquisition was the office of the Portuguese Inquisition, which operated in the Portuguese India, as well as the rest of the Portuguese Empire in Asia. It was established in 1560. It was briefly suppressed from 1774 to 1778, and it was finally abolished in 1812. Based on the records that survived by H.P. Solomon and Rabbi Isaac S.D. Samsun, state that between the Inquisitions beginning in 1561 and its temporary um, abolition in 1774, some 16,202 persons were brought to trial by an inquisition. Of this number, 57 of them were sentenced to death and executed. Another 64 were burned in public. This sentence was imposed on those persons who had either fled or died in prison. Others left to rot. In the latter case, the executed persons okay, look, we could look, this is real history. We talk about this all the time, don't we? But see, like, it's gotten to a point. Do you notice where people are just Christians today? Why? They should never be a part of these churches. These churches are ones who did this stuff here. You understand what I'm saying, Talmud? I mean, when are
Absolutely.
people going to wake up? What's going to happen? What do you think it would be better? Just is life better? I mean, the heathens, they were killing their own children, but people like the Indians, who they call Indians, which we know was a nation that was filled with multiple tribes and peoples here. You don't see that they was living crazy like that in South America. You have some of these crazy human sacrificing wackos. But you understand what I'm saying? What's any different than these so-called Catholics and Christians? I mean, we read about what they did. How can you do that to a human being? And then the Christians today want to have us to believe they wouldn't do it either. But they hate our guts because we don't serve the Trinity. There would be no difference. Nobody's special here. You know, what you think about it, brother?
I think that there's things that these people have ignored on purpose, and like for example, like the word Morano, right? Let me read you a few names of people that were in the Spanish Inquisition. So you got Yahya Ibn Yaish, Yahya bin Yahya. You got Yosef bin Yahya Hazakin, and you got Solomon bin Yahya Hazakin. So, and that's just a few names that speak to a
Oh,
family
okay.
line
So
that
they
was
would have did
noble.
that to you. Your name would
Exactly.
have been Talmud. I'm Eliyahu, and we would have been in that list.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Now, the interesting thing about this is the ancestor of these people, like these people were called Negroes in Portugal, right? So you got
That
Yaya,
is true.
um,
Many
the
black
Negro,
Jews, many black Jews in Spain.
right? And so when you have the word Morano, if y'all look up what y'all Google Morano real quick.
Which is another reason. You had the Marano, like you're saying, people would say black Jews for, for lack of a better term. And also what you would find also is that you had yeah, what you're talking about now. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
exactly. So then when you
Yeah,
look up
to
the word
Morocco,
like
the Moroccans that came up there and all that, yeah.
that it's spelled Marrano. Morano, that's a type of pig. So Morano pig. What color is a Morano pig? If y'all look at the images of a Morano pig, which is what they call these Jews in Spain
Dark.
and Portugal, black.
Hmm.
So Morano is a type of pig that's black. So they were mocking these Jews because they didn't do things like eat
Who was,
pork.
brother? Christians?
Exactly.
Christians was doing that. Christians was mocking
Exactly.
people because they wouldn't eat pork, and Christians was killing people because they wouldn't eat pork. We read that before. It's called the Greeks. Go ahead, brother.
Correct. And then Christians doing these things and calling these people Moranos. Morano is literally a black pig. So, in terms of what you bringing out, the reality of it is there's a history, a long history associated with these people trying to annihilate the
Right.
indigenous
Well,
understanding
well,
of the
think about it.
scriptures.
Well, think about it, brother Talmud. People's color, their ethnicity, their tribal connection actually protected them a lot from Catholics. Because the inception of the beast here that comes from Rome, which is some people would want to say a metropolitan type area, but it's predominantly like people. Okay. Now, on top of this, the Greeks coming down to the Romans, it is the Gauls, the French, and a lot of people who were over that way in Spain that were darker at the time, even going into Ireland and other places, and then downward into the top of Egypt. Now, see, that's where skin color, facial features, language barriers protected many people, but they got slaughtered. They killed so many people. And this is why we see that the establishment of what we call colonialism is only a perpetuation of an inquisition and against the minorities of the world. Why? Because they're not their race predominantly or amalgamated into their political, social, religious system, which they made under the auspices of what they call Christianity in 325. But go ahead, brother.
Yeah. And see, a lot of these things on the front end, to your point, wasn't necessarily done because of their skin color. It was done because these people were they were actual descendants of the people of the book. So
Yeah,
they posed.
specifically, yeah, Jews. Yeah, Jews and the early Jewish Christians is what people would say, but we know Hebrews who followed the Mashiach, right?
Hmm. And these people posed a threat to the early stages of quote unquote Christendom because of the fact Christendom was trying to divorce itself from the integrity, you see, of what the Tanakh was all about. And the fact that, like, for example, in the Council of Laodicea, which was in 364 AD, the community of faith was keeping the Sabbath, you see, for 364 years, you see, beyond the ministry of the Messiah. 364 AD. That was a council that made the Sabbath illegal.
No, they didn't know when the Sabbath was, brother.
You
They didn't know.
see that? So, being that most people don't know that, Like, they don't know how integral and how entrenched the original messianic community was with people who were indigenous to the people who wrote the book, because it was an amalgamation of the people who descended from people who wrote the book, as well as people who came from other nations who embraced the information and became a part of the conglomerate. So these people were a thorn in the side of the agendas and the initiatives that the ruling class had. And Yahya, the Negro, you see, is a man that is an example of the kind of hostility that the original descendants of the people who wrote the book met. You see, under the thumb of empires where people were trying to use Christianity as a ploy to basically take over the world on some pinky in the brain type stuff. You see, when you really look into these individuals that were in Portugal, that were in Spain, and that were ultimately kicked out of Portugal and kicked out of Spain in what we call the Spanish Inquisition, right? This has a lot of deep understanding. You see, when it comes to, these people were literally creating another religion that intentionally was designed to be the opposite of the people and the text. Like, this is common knowledge, especially when we understand the historicity of these things. Um, like, for example, a lot of the reason why the pagans went with, so for example, let me put this into perspective. There was only a handful of groups associated with the Bible to begin with in the early days, that led into what we know Christianity to be now. You had you had Jews that were like pretty much Tanakh observant. You had the Israelite community, along with people from other nations who became a part of the Messianic movement. And these individuals kept the Torah, you see, along with the teachings of the Messiah. And then you had a fringe group called the Gnostics. And the Gnostics, you see, were a group of people that was just basically on some hippie type stuff with the teachings of the New Testament. And in these people, um, having a quote unquote profession of faith in the Messiah, but they had no relationship with the Torah, when the Roman Empire ultimately began to gravitate toward the scripture, we have historical record as to what group they went with or what group they looked to for their information, and it was the Gnostics. You see, they associated themselves with the people that didn't necessarily have a real familiar foundation in the Tanakh. They didn't go with the Messianic community. The Messianic community are these that we see that these people were trying to destroy and eliminate. And I yield with that.
Very good. So we can see that the first century Christians, that's what they want to say. We're going to say followers of Christ in this instance, were pacifists. Pacifists in the sense that they were not cowards, or that they did not resist confrontation, especially if it had to do with evil or injustice, but they were not violent. And violent, not only were they not violent in the sense of personal affair, but in military prowess. There was no Apostle Peter, there was no Apostle John, there was no Apostle Jesus who said, "Get thyself into companies and troops and bear thy swords against the heathens at this specific time." This is not what is going on. So Constantine, he's the one underneath the auspices of Christianity who brought in the concept of what we call just war, what people coin today holy war. We're not talking about from the Bible or anything like this, meaning of the command of God or something. We mean from Plato and Cicero's validation and the making moral of the slaughtering of the enemies. And they take Plato and Cicero's concept of just war, and what you see is underneath the auspices of Christianity brings that into play. It's called the Constantinian shift, something you want to remember. So I'm going to read about this. After the Constantinian shift, Christianity became entangled with government, in government and its affairs, within its military. While anthropologists have shown formally that there was the persecution, death, and torturing of numerous Christians by the droves, yet in this time period and era emerges a new type of Christian. You see, rising out of the ranks of the Romans army itself. There is no doubt that religious institutions, including Christian ones, have been used coercively by governments over times, and that they have been used in coercion themselves. Augustine advocated government force in his epistle 185, a treatise concerning the correction of the dynastics. And they're like people who think that there should be like a moral accountability within the ranks of high leaders or something. They split off and made a sect. So you got to deal with them. So they wasn't liking something pertaining to morality. Justifying coercion from scripture. He cites Jesus striking Paul during Paul's vision on the road to Damascus. He also cites the parable of the great banquet in Luke 14:22 through 23, which I'm probably thinking is the one where he says, beat him with many stripes. So they're going to beat you with many stripes. Okay? Such short term pain for the sake of eternal salvation was an act of charity and love in his view. So, see, they believe that twisting your toes off your body, they believe that pulling your teeth out one by one to get you to renounce whatever it is that they thought was against the triune God was love and charity. For if they could get you to renounce, then they could save your eternal soul. Though they destroy your flesh member by member, castrating you, then pulling off your fingernails, then pulling out your teeth, then pouring salt over your wounds. All this because they want to save your soul through the destruction of your flesh. They want to give your body over to Satan, that they may take you and tie you up and bind you, that they'll put many lacerations on you, these very, paper thin like cuts. And what they'll do is they'll put honey over you, molasses on your body, and they'll leave you out there to where the flies get in your wounds, and then the maggots become inborn in your body, and then you have maggots eating your flesh, and you're still alive because they want to save your eternal soul through charity and love. Examples of forced conversion to Christianity include the Christian persecution of paganism under Theodosius I, the forced conversion of violent assimilation of pagan tribes in medieval Europe, the Inquisition, including its manifestations in Goa, Mexico, Portugal, Spain, the forced conversion of indigenous children in North America and Australia, the castration, killing, and lynching of numerous people who were against the position that was purported, the fabrication of documents, even the Bible, to give a specific view, such as what is documented in the museum we see today called the Slave Bible, Christian views on slavery, and religion, the practices today as just opposed to then. Early Christianity variously opposed, accepted, and ignored slavery. The early Christian perspectives on slavery were formed in the context of Christianity's roots in Judaism, which sect they hate. We already went through the fact of how many Jews they were killing. The earliest surviving Christian teachings about slavery are from Paul the Apostle. Paul did not renounce the institution of slavery, though perhaps this is not conceptually at all related or to whatsoever to the pilgrims and foreigners and those who came over to the Americas, which a much different form or type of slavery, as proposed from what we see in early antiquital writings, such as the Judaic Torah, which they were persecuted for. So, see, these Jewish people are like, oh my God, you shouldn't be doing this to people. This is not a righteous form of justice. Will kill you too, Jew. Stemming from similarly what we see in Aristotle's writings, meaning connecting Aristotle back to this crap of slavery and whatever else that they're talking about. We see that because the Romans would throw babies in pits, and you could walk by and pick up a baby and make him your boy slave. And they would do sick stuff to their boy slaves. They would raise them up as their sons, as their children, and do stuff to them, unseemly stuff. Where you think this stuff comes from? Where you think these Romans got this from? They didn't think it was immoral. Why? Because they had their morologists, Aristotle, Plato, all these people, Pythagoras. Oh my God, they were evil people. He thought that Christian slaves ought to serve their masters. Now let's continue on. Right. A strain of hostility towards Judaism and Jewish people developed amongst Christians in the early years of Christianity after the Constantinian shift. Persisted over the ensuing centuries, was driven by numerous factors, including theological difference, oppressions, eradication. Good Lord. The Christian drive for converts grew, which is decreed by the Great Commission in the Bible, but was yet used by these proponents in very diverse ways. And we know what that means. It means, the Great Commission was torturing and killing and cutting your head off and burning your body alive. Modern anti-Semitism has primarily been described as hatred against Jews as a race, a form of racism rather than hatred against one religious group. I want to continue on. My God. So I asked the question, underneath secular government, are we safer than under religious ecclesiastical government in the realm of Christianity? I think so. Because the truth is, they want to kill you. And the experiment has already played out enough. We're not talking about one generation. We're talking about numerous generations. We're not talking about one government. We're talking about numerous governments. Wherever Christianity reigns, the triune God reigns, and people suffer great injustices and horrors wherever the triune God reigns. So we need to keep the triune God from reigning, which means the Catholic Church and the Christian organization. Because the Catholic Church and the Christian organization are what we can see from history objectively one of the darkest evils to ever arise on the face of this earth.
This is a really sensitive topic when we see how these people would have used a lot of Plato's views. I mean, even in the fact that Plato said things like the gods should be seen in threes. This was a man that had the audacity to declare how he thinks the gods should be seen, right? And so when you look at that, and then you look at, for example, when Constantine converts to quote unquote Christianity, I mean, and I know this is hard, and I don't want to necessarily hit too hard when I say this, but I stand on it. We're supposed to be living by every word that comes out of the mouth of the Father. I don't see nowhere in the Bible where Christianity came out of the mouth of the Father. But I do see historical records that show that the people that created Christianity did so to create a religion that was antithetical to the scriptures and the people who wrote the book. I do see that. I do see in Ephesians chapter 2, it speaks to the fact that Gentiles were brought near through the blood of the Messiah and they became fellow citizens, you see, with the Israelites. I do see that. I do see the fact that the nation of Israel consisted of ethnic descendants and people who came from other nations who became a part of the nation as a whole. I do see that based on what the text reads, and I'm saying all this to say this. Basically, what we're looking at is the fact that this is an assault against the truth. And the truth is, if in the event we are truly being integral, to what the text reads, then this means that everybody would be part of the nation of Israel. Everybody would be a part of the nation that the Mashiach is a king over. If in the event we have, if we keep the text intact as pertains to its the authorial intent of the scriptures, because when we look at how these people, these pagans, you see they objected to quote unquote God fearing, right? Um, that's because of the fact that conversion in their eyes was offensive. I repeat, to pagans, conversion in their eyes was offensive because of the fact that these people who came into the messianic understanding, that led to them to being a part of the nation of Israel. This there was a principled renunciation of all other cults to the extent to where there was an actual separation that was taking place between the people who were coming to faith, you see, in the teachings of the Mashiach, and things and or people that they were associated with before, you see, they came into this knowledge. And that's why Colossians chapter 2 is a text that is the most butchered texts of all texts you see in the whole Bari Hadashah, or the whole quote unquote New Testament. Look at this, Colossians 1. For I would that I would have great conflict for you and for them at Laodicea, right? As many as have not seen my face. So the context here is set, to be out the gate, because this is a conflict, you see, for people in Colossus and for people in Laodicea. Colossus is not a Jewish environment. Laodicea is not a Jewish environment. It's not an Israelite environment in no way, shape, form, or fashion. These people are not in power, you see, in ways that Christianity would like to posit when they use this particular text. And if you read it real clean and real simple and real slow and real plain, you see that Paul is addressing issues that has to do with the world that these people are in as pertains to pagan dominated environments, right? Now, it goes on to say that beware lest any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit after the traditions of men, like Plato, after the rudiments of the world and not after Mashiach. This is critical because in this is another allusion to the context that's being set here as pertains to the philosophers of the Greco-Roman world. Vain philosophy, deceit, the traditions of men. You see, what we're talking about is a people that would do things like argue with one another irrespective of truth. This was one of their main, I would say, social gatherings or causes, to gather socially. They would sit up and get together and watch people argue, you see, and whoever could argue the best and whoever could appeal to the emotions of the people the best was seen as the winner of these oratory debates. Paul is saying don't participate in this mess. This stuff is vain. It's deceitful. It's the tradition of man. It's a part of the rudiments of that world, that body of men. And then he turns around and says here, um, in this same chapter, which is critical in Colossians chapter 2, it says here, and you being dead in your sins and the uncircumcision of your flesh have been quickened together, right, with him, having forgiven you of all transgressions, blotting out the handwriting of dogma that was against us, which was contrary to us, and took it out of the way, nailing it to the cross, having spoiled the principalities and the powers. This is speaking to the people who are in power in Laodicea. This is speaking to the people who are in power in Colossus, that the Mashiach's work has spoiled them. The Mashiach's work exposes to the people who are coming to faith in the Messiah that these people don't have nothing for you. The way that they've governed the people, the way that their principles inform behavior, the way that they operate, the way they move, the way they address, civil issues or what have you. The Mashiach's teachings spoiled that. It ruined that. It exposes how these people are not people that the community of faith would have in any way, shape, form, or fashion really gave real affinity toward and or gave real audience to. These people, in terms of these principal renunciations of all cults that they belonged to before coming into faith in the Messiah, is marked by the fact that the ministry of the Messiah is literally these people seeing the Messiah as a king of a nation that they believe is a whole lot more substantive, and that the principles of this nation is a whole lot more, I would say, necessary, to the extent to where they're separating themselves from any principles, any concepts, any views, any standards that is not aligning with the principles of this kingdom that they're becoming a part of. That's why it says, let no man judge you in meat or drink and in respect of a feast day or new moon or Shabbats. See, this text is butchered extremely, because this is actually a warning against the same people that he's talking about throughout this whole chapter, which is the people of Laodicea, which is the people of Colossus, which are pagans that deal with things like the traditions of men with respect to vain philosophy, things that were central and integral to pagans. So I yield with that.
Right. And so, I mean, but we see all of this, and what we don't see is any foundation for that in the biblical text, right? So we see where it comes from, and it's amazing every time we track this down, it goes to Plato. You know, he's always one of the culprits, and it's really amazing that we keep finding this. I mean, even here within Christian violence, let me go back there for a minute. For those of you who are just joining in, we've been talking about, is it better to live underneath the heathen or Christians? And really, we've been talking about Christian violence for the most part for a good period of time. We understand the pagan violence, but we're talking about more so the society that we are settled in today, as opposed to what we see when the Christians were actually in rulership or really in power to execute, whether it be judgment, by and through courts or tribunals or just the town hall or whatever they were going to use to do you in. That there was some very, very disturbing things that we read about. Now, the concept of holy war or just war I brought up earlier, which is just really amazing that it doesn't go to what you would think, maybe to the Torah or some other justification, but rather to Plato, right? So this is just war theory is the doctrine of military ethics of Roman philosophical and Catholic origin, studied by moral theologians, ethicists, and international policymakers, that holds that a conflict can and ought to be met the criteria of philosophical, religious, or political justice, provided it follows the certain conditions. The concept of justification for war under certain conditions goes back to at least Roman and Greek thinkers such as Cicero and Plato. You see, so this when you take a look at this, what happened with Constantine, right? And what's called the Constantinian shift. Okay, I'm going to read about the Constantinian shift. It's what's used by some theologians and historians of antiquity to describe the political and theological changes that took place during the 4th century under the leadership of Emperor Constantine the Great. Now, what I want everybody to think about here is whenever you start going into this type of information, people are going to tell you this is conspiracy type stuff. You're going to hear people tell you, oh, that's made up. Oh, that's misunderstood. What I'm reading to you is actually history. This is not conspiracy. And when you come across people who talk like that, that's because they are more than likely a Trinitarian Christian who is underneath the mind control of the Catholic and Protestant Church. And that's why they're always going to say these things. But this is very documented. This is very clear. These Christians, real Christians, authentic followers of Christ, were not using violence in any way, even to their own detriment, as we see very clearly recorded in the pages of history when we talk about the Roman Colosseum. And the many writings that we have surrounding this time period by which many so called Jewish Christians or Hebrews that follow Christ were being killed, slaughtered, lions, tigers, and bears. Oh my. Now, in the 4th century, under the leadership of Emperor Constantine the Great, Rodney Clapp claims that the shift or change started in the year 200. The term was popularized by the Mennonite theologian John H. Yonder. He claims that the change was not just freedom from persecution, but an alliance between state and church that led to a kind of Caesar propapianism. What does he mean by that word, Caesar propapianism? It means now, for the first time, you're really seeing an amalgamation of political power and ecclesiastical power together, right? The claim that there ever was a Constantinian shift has been disputed. Peter Lehrhart argues that there was a brief, ambiguous, quote, Constantinian moment, end quote, in the 4th century, but that there was, quote, no permanent, epochal, quote, Constantinian shift. So he means like it didn't continue down this way. Well, why are they saying this? Because you have men after after you start going down, especially when you had the split, you have the papal power, you have the popes really start to emerge in the place of a Caesar even, and this is was like really unfounded, and this is what they mean, meaning like this didn't stay in place. This Caesar and this made up church. It basically funneled down into a point to where you see the rise of a pope being, if you will, the one invested with the power and authority. And what you see here is Constantine the Great reigned from 306 to 337 and quote unquote adopted Christianity. Okay. He adopted Christianity as a system or belief. And remember, this is the guy where everybody you talk to who's a so called Christian today is going back to the records of what he himself had brought together underneath the Council of Nicaea and what they called their, apostolic creed. You hear people talk like this. It's because of this guy here, okay? And because of what he was doing and what he was orchestrating. They'll tell you he didn't have anything to do with it. I've heard the people with the most nerdiest people with the most confidence ever sit here and try to tell me a lie and tell me this man didn't have nothing to do with the language that was found in these things. I sent you an invite, brother Zaire. Let me mod you up, brother. So tell me. So, oh dang, I put him down in the audience. I'm gonna send him an invite now. But he did. He's the one who pushed to have that word that everybody loves to use that you deal with your favorite line pastor, homoousia. And he pushed to have that substance, that same substance put in there. Yeah. Because there's a bunch of people who are against it. So I get tired of people. They're lying to us. And do not send your children to any of these churches. I'm telling for all y'all who are here, I mean, tell people if people they say, what's a good church I should go to? What is best today in this day and age is say, don't I would not send your children to any of these churches because they're greatly involved, a lot of these, and you can't tell which one, so it's best to stay away from them in sex trafficking and stuff like that and child trafficking. Because that's what these people are really doing today. Okay. Anybody want to bring something out?
I
Yeah, I
came up
mean,
here.
go ahead,
Go
go
ahead,
ahead.
Tommy. No, no, go ahead, Tommy. You got it. I'll bring it out after.
Yeah, I mean, like just more, of the more of the true substance of what it means to live his life. When it comes to the fact that these people had a problem with the fact that these people were separating themselves from any and everything that they were a part of before coming into the knowledge of this truth. This conversation boils down to control. This is the reason why these people were so offended by people who are converting and becoming a part of the Israelites would know, the Israelite nation, you see, without guile, you see, or the Israel of Yah, you see, these people were seen as, people who were basically committing treason. Because if you're in the Roman Empire and you're acknowledging the fact that you have a king, you see, that is not Caesar, that is a very, very problematic statement at that time as pertains to how they viewed Caesar and
That's
how
right.
everybody was supposed to be an unrelenting uh, proponent and representative and adherent to Caesar in his reign. See,
They
and if you have, go ahead.
Yeah, they had seen a new age had come. Like, see, they didn't care if everybody worshipped all those gods. The problem was that something became and was becoming predominant where everybody was like, no, we need to worship one God and all these other gods are false. So Constantine, I think, and some of these other guys were really smart because they saw that the era was coming. Like these old ways were going to die. Like these people, like whatever lies we've been telling is broken, and so what they had to do was then make a world religion or establish or amalgamate those things into what they could define now as the one God, which is called Christianity, right? Go ahead, brother.
Yeah. And this is a very revolutionary, conversation because of the fact that the people that were more so integral to the original teachings, they're creating communities, and these communities are ordering themselves after the principles of the Most High. Like, for example, when you look at Philippians and see, this is really, really important because this is why people can read this text and they're dealing with everything but what the text is actually saying because of these narratives that we're looking at the text through. Um, Look what it says here, Philippians 2:11. It says, "Wherefore, my beloved, as you have also, as you had always obeyed, not as in my presence only, but much more in my absence, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling." See, what the community of faith was being presented with in them coming to the knowledge of this walk or this way, right? These people were coming into a paradigm and a program associated with keeping the commands, right? Because that word obey is a Greek word that means hearken to a command. You see, in order for you to obey that command. So to hearken to a command means to give respectful attention to the commands. See, the commandments of the kingdom of heaven are being established. You see, but if all we're talking about is the Godhead or what have you, all we're talking about is the Messiah, you see, was God in the quote unquote flesh, you
Right.
see, and we're not dealing with the
So,
integrity of what these things actually mean, we are completely missing the substance of what these people were actually being taught. These people were actually being given a program, if you will, that was allowing them to detox and to separate and rid themselves, you see, of behaviors, of
a
views.
remedy plan. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly,
I want
and
to
a
play.
whole.
Let me
Go
play
ahead.
something for you and everybody here. I hope everybody's listening. I want to play this for y'all. It's only 1 minute long. And it's retired U.S. General Wesley Clark. Okay, this is an honorable man here, right? And he's going to tell you what happened after 9/11. Okay, and I want you to think about everything that's been going on in the world, and I want you to think of how stupid and ignorant everybody is because they told you all this. This is Wesley Clark, retired Army general. Okay, and listen what he was told after 9/11. He's speaking. It's public. You can see it yourself. Went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld, and one of the generals called me and he said, "Sir, you got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, "No, no." He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." I said, "We're going to war with Iraq? Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al Qaeda?" He said, "No, no." He says, "There's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like
We don't know what to do about terrorists, but we got a good military and we can take down governments. So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, "I just got this down from upstairs," meaning the Secretary of Defense office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran." I said, "Is it classified?" He said, "Yes, sir." I said, "Well, don't show it to me."
Oh, okay. So what is that? Why is everybody confused? You see, all this stuff that's been going on, all this terrorism, all this stuff, it's all to take down governments, principalities, and powers. And they're telling you what principalities and powers want to take down, and now you see what's going on. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, man. On that note, let me read this because that fits into exactly what I'm about to read. Paul of Samosata, a very early Christian bishop that I refer to. He's a Unitarian. I always bring this out to people, right? Look at the information that I'm about to read. It says the synod deposed Paul as bishop and elected uh, Dominius as as its successor. They also wrote an en- encycled letter to Dionysius and Maximus, bishops of Rome and Alexandria. Um, it says, respectively, this letter is the only indisputable contemporary document concerning him, and was preserved in Eusebius of uh, Caesarea's ecclesiastical history. However, because the synod had acted without consulting the clergy or the people, its authority was in question, enabling Paul to claim continued position of his bishopric, or being bishop. Since he had friendly relations with Zobia, um, the separatist queen of Palmyra, ruling in Syria, he maintained his occupancy of the bishop's house in Antioch for another 4 years. Later in 272, however, when the emperor Aurelian defeated Zonabia, Paul lost her protection. Aurelian allowed the two parties for and against Paul to present their cases before his own tribunal. Aurelian was not a Christian and had no interest in the doctrinal issue of the church. Why, wishing only to restore order, he relied on the judgment of the bishops of Italy and Rome. The unanimous verdict was for Paul to relinquish his position as bishop. What we've just read here is a dismantling of a government, and because that government was dismantled, Aurelian comes in and says, "Yeah, Paul, get out. Paul, get out, man. You can't be here." So, I'm using this as a historical example of early Christians that did not believe Jesus was God or anything like that. That because of Aurelian, an emperor, defeating the queen. I forgot her name already. Zobia? I don't know. I don't remember her name. But because he defeated her, now Paul is out from being bishop. Because before they tried to depose him, but what was the problem when they tried to depose him, in council? The people that deposed him didn't go to the authorities of the church to actually depose him. So it wasn't really a deposition. It was really just them talking and them saying, "We don't like you, but we can't do nothing to get you out of here." It was only when an emperor that's not a Christian came in, was he deposed. You see, that's the stuff that Eliyahu was talking about. Destruction of rules, authorities, principalities, and all of that stuff. You know? But yeah, peace. I'm gonna put that link in the back as well. I'm gonna read it one more time for the people. So hold on. The synod deposed Paul as bishop and elected Dominaeus, I may be saying his name wrong, as his successor. They also wrote an Encycled letter to Dionysius and Maximus, bishops of Rome and Alexandria, respectively. This letter is the only indisputable contemporary document concerning him, and and was preserved in Eusebius his writings. This is the main history right here. However, because the synod had not acted had acted without counseling, without the counseling, uh, sorry, please forgive me, had acted without consulting, please forgive me, the clergy or the people, its authority was in question. So when they first tried to depose Paul, that authority was in question because they didn't actually consult the people they was meant to in the church. So this then it says enabling Paul to continue possession of his bishopry. Since he had friendly relations with Zenobia, the separatist queen of Palma and ruling in Syria, he maintained his occupation or occupant of the bishop's house in Antioch for another 4 years. Later in 272, however, when the Emperor Aurelian defeated Zobia, Paul lost her protection. Aurelian allowed the two parties for and against Paul to present their cases before his own tribunal. This is the things that's being done in front of Aurelian, in front of his tribunal. His tribunal ain't no Christians. Aurelian was not a Christian, and no and had no interest. This is what the document says. I had no interest in doctrinal issues of the church. Wishing only to restore order, he relied on the judgment of the bishops of Italy and Rome. That's, you see that? Look what it says then next, in the next part of the paragraph. The ruling of Aurelian acquired during the little peace of the church, a roughly 40-year period when Christianity flourished without official sanctions from the central government. It was the first time the church had sought the emperor's intervention in an internal dispute. So an internal dispute happened, and they got a non-Christian to deal with it. Mm-mm-mm.
Right. And Paul said, don't go before the unjust, clearly. In Deuteronomy 7:25 it says, he shall speak words against the Most High, he shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and shall think to change times and laws. And power shall be given into his hand to times and half a time. Right? Now, when you read Cambridge Bible Commentary for Schools and Colleges, it says, think to change times and laws. Right? It says, the phrase is worded generally, and it is true of Antiochus, according to 1 Maccabees chapter 1, 41 and 42. It says, moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people, and everyone should leave his laws. So all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king, sought to interfere arbitrarily even with heathen cults. But the allusion is more particular to the attempts made by him to suppress the Hebrews' religion by prohibiting the observance of religious festivals and other ordinances of the law. First Maccabees, chapter 1, verses 44 through 49. For the king had sent letters by messengers unto Jerusalem and the cities of Judah, that they should follow the strange laws of the land, and forbid burnt offerings and sacrifice and drink offerings in the temple, and that they should profane the Sabbaths and festival days, and pollute the sanctuary and holy people, set up altars and groves and chapels of idols, and sacrifice swine's flesh and unclean beasts, that they should also leave their children uncircumcised, and make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness, that would be foods, and profanation, to the end that they might forget the law and change all the ordinances. Think quote unquote, means plan or even hope, a sense which the word uses has often in the Targums and in the Syriac. Luke 24, verse 21. And so I'll read briefly Luke 24, verse 41. But we trusted that it had been he which should have redeemed Israel. And besides all this, it is the third day since all these things were done. For, quote, times, end quote, in the sense of fixed times. Here, the fixed times for religious observance. The Hebrew Moedim, Leviticus 23:2. Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them concerning the feast of Yahweh, which you shall proclaim to be holy convocations, and these are my feasts. Leviticus 23, verse 4. These are the feast of Yahweh, even holy gatherings, which you shall proclaim in their seasons. Isaiah chapter 1, verse 14. Your new moons and your appointed feasts, etc. AVRV, appointed feast, Isaiah 33:20. Look upon Zion, the city of your solemnities. Thy eyes shall see Jerusalem, a quiet habitation, a tabernacle that shall not be taken down, nor its stakes thereof be removed forever, neither any of its cords be broken. See in Targum, Genesis 1:14, Exodus 13:10, Exodus 23:15, Numbers 28:2, Isaiah 33:20. For solemnities, quote unquote, Jeremiah 8:7. Yea, the stork in the heaven knoweth her appointed times, Moedim. And the turtle, the crane, and swallow observe the time of their coming. But my people know not the judgment of Yahweh. By, quote, law, end quote, is meant the Mosaic law, as in Daniel 6:5. Then said these men, we shall not find any occasion against this Daniel, except we find it against him concerning the law of his God. And my God, so you see that look what happened in Daniel 6:5. Oh man, this guy keeps the law of his God. We won't find anything against him except with the law of his God. So let's try to hem him up. And then they're telling you here they think to change times and laws, festivals, moedims, the appointed times of God, which are given for us to know the coming of the times, like he said to the damn stork, and laws, which is the Mosaic law. Did anybody see a problem with this?
Yeah, I see the problem. Christianity has fell into that. They're the ones changing the law. They're the ones doing that. You know. Mm. Can you lot still? I just had to put my headphones in. Yeah, they're the ones doing that. They're the ones changing the time signs and the law. They're the one. They're the one. And even even what's his name? Stanley uses this as a way to prove Jesus is God. Hey, Eliyahu, the guy Stanley uses this to show that Jesus is God. He says, yeah.
Right, that'd be the damn Antichrist. I'm
Oh
gonna,
my God. Go ahead, go
yeah.
ahead.
You see what's happened? What's happened is what they did to the Christians is they always hated Jews. The Lutherans, the Catholics, they all hate Jews. They all hate for Israel. Why are they saying stand for Israel? Because they're pulling out the Roman tactic of holy war. What they're doing is they want you to stand for Israel because it's an apartheid state that they've made in the Middle East to go to war with those seven nations. And that's what people don't see. So that's why you have all these churches telling you, bless Israel, bless Israel. Christians don't like Israel. They just don't. They never have in history. The only reason why that's been propagated on them is because now they want them to help them fight. So they control everybody. They control people so easily. They paint the narrative in such a way that people can't help but just take hold of the bait. It is wild how easily they control people. It can be your own mama, and you have to argue with your own mama day and night because now she's got these lies in her head. and she won't believe her own flesh and blood. That's how powerful these people's just lies are. They just believe, they people have been programmed to believe authority. And so when they're just like, hey everybody, you know, all the churches, they put out the World Council of Churches meet, and they say, okay, well guys, this is what the movement's going to be this year, and this is what we're going to focus on, and this year we're going to really get everybody aware and that we should stand with Israel. It's game over. That's what all of them are doing now. Well, who's the man that person looks to, that council's under? You see, it's all the same thing. So I just look. I'm trying to tell people, why would you ever get involved with that religion? I mean, if you wouldn't become a Muslim, if you wouldn't become a Jew, why would you become a so-called Christian? And I just think it's just, to me, it's almost unredeemable. You know, the word is just, I mean, isn't it? What do y'all think about the word? Isn't it just unredeemable? Like, I mean, we try, oh well, Christian is really this. But I mean, by and large, Christianity is the triune God. It's the triune God, and it's the changing of times and laws, right? Underneath the auspices of the triune God.
Absolutely. And that's why, when I say what I say, as far as the text teaches us, we are supposed to be living off of every word that comes out of the mouth of the Father. And then I ask questions. Okay, well, where does the scripture say that the Father, in essence, announced that it was His will for this institution to exist, or this religion to exist? If it's nowhere in the book, brother, and then we can trace the roots of Christianity back to men like the Marcionites, who intentionally, under Marcion, created a religion
Yeah,
that
man,
was
that's
for
way
the
worse. That's like back in Moses' day, when Korah was opposing Moses. That's like if
correct,
Korah never got killed and Korah went off and made a whole religion.
correct.
That's what those
That's a
people are.
that's a fact, bro. Like, so that would be like people calling themselves Korathites today versus Israelites. See, the word Israel came out of the mouth of the Father. You see, and it has a specific meaning as it relates to the Father. See, we got to see things from heaven down rather than from earth up. Hopefully that makes sense. And what I
Well, yeah,
mean by that
as it
is
relates to the Father and the Son, right? Because Israel is God's son, and
cor-
yeah,
correct, correct. We got to see things from how the Most High gave it to us, how the Most High communicated. That's why in John 1, verse 1, no, I'm playing. In John, starting at I wanted to mess with David. It says here, verse 47, it says, and Yahusha saw Nathanael coming to him and said, behold, a Yasharali indeed, in whom is no guile. Right? So we're talking, see, this is what it means to be an Israelite from the Most High's paradigm, to be a man of Israel of no guile. See, Israel has meaning associated with being a contender, you see, for the Creator, or a soldier of God. You see, I have a real profound definition of the word Israel that I seen in the Hebrew manuscript that really makes a lot of sense as pertains to the words that make Israel. It's a soldier, like the word Israel means soldier of God, right? And in that sense, you can see it because Israel was chosen by the Most High to go forth into Canaan to fight against injustice, not to be a colonizer, not to try to spread throughout the world, you see, by the sword. No, Canaan was filled with injustice. Canaan means the land of the merchants. These people were endeavoring in consumerism. These people were endeavoring in
yeah,
mercantilism, you see.
yep,
And in that, these people were dealing with all kinds of different debaucherous activities as far as whoredom and things of that nature is concerned. These people were engaging in feudalism. These people worship Baal. See, people don't understand the historical implications associated with idolatry as far as Baal is concerned. But there's certain derivations of Baal that speaks to Lord or Master that gives perspective to how these people viewed what it meant to be a Baal worshiper, in terms of the fact that these people believed in lording and mastering over land and resources to the detriment of the poor. This is why amongst Baal worshipers you have prostitution. Prostitution is always a sign, you see, and or a symptom of a paradigm or of a economic system that's predatory. Prostitutes or prostitution is always consistent with a ruling class that subjugates people up under its authority in order for the ruling class to enrich itself using the poor to accomplish that. And see, where the prostitution comes in is when you have people that don't have the resources to put food on their table, to pay bills, to pay out their debts, to feed their children, and things of that nature. People find themselves in a position to sacrifice their dignity and their self-respect in the name of being able to pay off debts or feed hungry
Yeah.
children.
Controlled crime. Controlled
Exactly.
crime, right? Hmm.
Exactly. So this is what's going on in Canaan. Injustice. You see, so when you the Most High calls Israel, you see, within the context of the name that the Most High gave Israel, as far as a soldier of God, to go forth and fight, you see, against injustice in a real, tangible, and practical way in that specific area. Israel wasn't never charged to go out and just be trying to kill people and take their land and stuff like that. No, that's not what the Most High told them to do in Canaan. The Most High sent them to eradicate a cancer, a real deal cancer, you see, that had consumed the people in terms of their system and their behavior, which is important. And I yield with that.
Yeah, interesting title, bros. The modern Christian is a heathen, and that's because of religious syncretism such as Constantine, these church fathers, these councils who adhered to the principles of Constantine in Rome. That's how they got their authority and power. That's how we have the custom of today of going to a church building and listening to one single man give you his interpretation. That custom comes from the papacy. It comes from Roman Christianity. The fact that they build whole cathedrals for centuries. They've built cathedrals around graveyards. That's a custom that no Israelite Christian, no follower of Christ who's an Israelite would have ever came into practice of, because it was directly against their law. Yeah. Um, they were also killing the real Jews and the real Christians. So
Yeah, man. I just I've been hearing a lot of these other rooms. I heard some people in the room earlier. They were, in the Ask a Christian room, and they're arguing about, the nature of God and this theology and this science. And, it's got whole Godhead stuff we hear all the time. And you hear these church fathers being quoted all the time. And see, that's all religion is. That's just a construct of thought. And it's a construct of thought that they're unable to get out of because Think about it. I mean, anybody who you hear talking about so-called church fathers is a damn fool. I mean, they're a damn fool, especially if they're holding them as authoritative. We should go with what they say. What an idiot. I mean, these
Man,
people, yeah, these people hated Jews. They were killers. They were murderers. I mean, it's just like anybody today. It's like they want to tell you about Calvin. Well, Calvinists and these 5 points of Calvinism, and I'm a 5 point Calvinist. Hey, man, Calvin was a wicked person. He's an evil guy, man. I mean, Luther was too. Luther was a staunch racist, a staunch what they would call anti-Semiticist. He said that you should baptize Jews in a certain formula. And the formula you should baptize Jews in is basically tie a rock around their neck and drown them and say, I baptize you in the name of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I mean, you got all these people today are a part of this Protestant stuff because that's what their forefathers were. You know, that's all that is. And it's a damn shame over here in America and in Africa and in other places in the world that people really want to be a part of these damned Lutheran churches, that they want to be Baptist, that they want to be Methodist. That is crazy, man. That Africans would want to be Methodist.
hey, Eliyahu, you know what I think is
They
crazy?
were just white pilgrims, man. And they were stupid people. And you got people today like saying, I want to be this. I want to follow these people. What?
You know what I think is crazy? The fact that people try to number God. You know, they really try to, yo, can you number the sand of the sea? Hey, can you number the stars in the sky? But you want to tell me about God's nature? Please, go home. Don't talk to me about God's nature. You can't even number the sand of the sea or the stars in the sky. Don't talk to me about God's nature, please. Because God's nature is more magnificent than they. You know,
And it's really how the room started was that guy Chris Raw. I think he said to Courtney, he said, you're an heretic. And he's like, he said, like, if this was the dark age, you'd already been put to death for this. And then she was like, well, yeah, some of the things you say too are heretical. You would have too. And he was like, yeah. And I'm just thinking in my mind, like, y'all really want this, man. Y'all really want to be putting people to death. Y'all really look at that time where you see them heretics and they were getting put to death, and you want that. You want that. And that means everybody they call a heretic, everybody on here, that if they had the opportunity, if they really were in power, they would do that. They'll tell you no, but that's a lie because they're already immoral people. Like Chris Raw is not a disciplined person when it comes down to righteousness and justice and judgment because he's a lot. He goes around lying all the time. So if, like, for example, if Chris Raw was a judge, like for real in the real world, he would be a corrupt guy. Like if he got actually a power in some capacity, he would be a person who would be detrimental to people who are under him due to deceit or his covetousness or whatever. He's not, look, we can see it with better people than him. Better people than Chris Raw get corrupted by money and power. And so, heck no. I mean, the thing is, you got all these people on here. There's Christians. Think about it. They're in rooms. All these Christians talking to each other, and they're all in there talking about Jesus and talking about what Jesus came to do and all that. Don't you know they're all, most of these Christians are a part of organizations that are directly underneath the power of everything we've been talking about today. Everything, the beast. And so it's just at the end of the day, it's like, okay, well, what are you going to do? What are these people going to do? They don't believe you. If the best thing for them to do is actually get away from church. But see, that's the problem. People don't have nowhere to go. They don't have no teachers. They don't have no one with any knowledge. They're all lost. They've pretty much persecuted or killed or offended everybody who's tried to bring them truth. And that's where these people are at. You understand what I'm saying? So I just look at this and say, well, they always talk about Biden, and they always talk about our nation and the country we live in, and or whatever else around the world. But the truth is, to live up underneath those people would be much worse. And we see how they are. They always yield to what the government does, and they become a part of the arm of the government to persecute you. That's what Constantine did. Constantine made people who were wanting to be a so-called Christian. He took them. He made them an arm for his nation to fight. I mean, that's where you later on. That's where you get the Crusades. I mean, these are so-called believers in Christ that they say were fighting those things. But was that what Jesus was teaching? You know, so they'll go murder people, they'll go kill people in the name of Christ, but they won't keep any laws, statutes, or commandments in the name of Christ because they're not supposed to keep any feasts, any festivals, or any laws. Like, so when they were in there, when the Crusaders had Jerusalem, do you think that they were establishing those things as Christians? Hell no. Do you think they stayed in that land long? Hell no. Saladin came. So, Muslims. I mean, this is crazy. Oh well. What do y'all think about the issue here? I mean, like, look, so-called Pastor Charles Johnson, so-called Pastor Brandon J. Nero, so-called Pastor Sam, so-called wannabe Pastor Christina Nick, people like Courtney Smith, individuals like Nate in Ask a Christian Room. Hell, I'm thinking even people like Zadok at this point. People like Zadok Ben Israel are all underneath this thing. You know?
I'm telling y'all, man. Like, let's be objective and let's really look at this question honestly. Is being a Christian based on what it was designed to be anything more than being an adherent to men like Marcion? Being a true Christian, is that anything more than being an adherent to the things like what Constantine espoused? Is being a Christian anything more than what the quote unquote Greco-Roman church fathers basically
Dang.
forced?
I be
Is it anything more than those
I be
things?
seeing the people wearing them crosses, man. They be whores. Them people wearing them crosses, they're whores. They're lying men. The people who wear them crosses, they're untrustworthy people. They're a people who are unsympathetic. They have no empathy even. Like I've seen people who wear those crosses. They pick up guns and they shoot people. You see, I mean, I'm just trying to understand where do these people get their. I've done ministry town meeting. I've had a man try to argue with me. He said, "Oh, but John said to the soldier guy or something." I said, "You know what he told him? He said, 'Be content with your wages and do no man any violence.'" That's what John the Baptist taught. And then he was like, "Oh, well, Jesus taught to get a sword." See, they want it. They want it. They want to shoot you, man. That's what I'm looking at this man's spirit. I'm like, God, he's just trying to find places in the Bible to do somebody in. But he's a wicked man. He's the one who needs to be done in. You know,
It's a
think
fact.
about it. Yeah,
It's a
think about
fact.
these people. What is a Christian, man? I mean, I've rarely come across anybody who's an actual Christian, I guess. Like, why, how come people are in these rooms? I talk like this. This is why they kick me out of places. But like, even in these rooms on Clubhouse, tell me, you too. As soon as you start saying, no, he's part of the UPC, which is actually an organization to oppress the Monsbar people, then it's all mute this bastard, get him out. We don't want to hear you, conspiracists. But they're the damn people. See, they're they're the ones, man. Oh, see, when they start talking like that, you see, do you get it?
Talking, yeah, talking,
They're the
talking
damn
just like they
program.
church fathers.
Yes. They don't believe none of this stuff. Like, everybody thinks everything's a damn conspiracy. And a conspiracy is a real thing, by the way. Like a conspiracy, people go to prison for conspiracy. But they talk about conspiracy like it's fiction.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm blown
Yeah,
away at the ignorance of these people. These people should be going
yeah.
to prison. The government should have went to prison for the Tuskegee experiments. Where's reparations for that?
Crimes
These people
against
don't care about
humanity.
any justice. They're liars. They're just all liars. They're self-conceited people. They just want name brand items and money and houses. They're dead, man. They're about as dead as it gets, tell me. They don't care about
without
nobody suffering.
without
Yeah,
fear of contradiction.
they put their trust
It's real.
in chariots and horses and houses. Even these people you look up that are they got their power from clergy, from ecclesiastical courts, from papacy, from Caesar, from Constantine. The dukes that live today, dukes that are buried in Jerusalem, in the city of David, dukes that relinquished their power less than 200 years ago, apparently standing with royal families, still being held in esteem and regard. This is wicked. And
Bro,
they
that
really
Roman Empire didn't go nowhere.
didn't go nowhere.
That like the No, they what the Roman Empire did was give all their land that they took back away, and they became a religious institution that became the heads over the religions of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. That's what happened. They didn't go nowhere. They're the teachers of all those doctrines. If you're Muslim, if you're, I'm convinced. If you're a part of any of those things, you're just underneath the Romans.
That's
I
a
mean,
fact.
hey, it's what it is for me. I'm just saying. They
That's a
created
fact.
all this stuff. You know, the doctrines that we hold today that we think of as Judaism, that we think of as Christianity or whatever else, it's all perversion, man. I mean,
Yeah.
clearly.
Yeah.
And they
And,
still have their
and,
councils.
and to think, brother, and to think these people, a lot of these people have never heard of Yahwism. I mean, we really got to think about this.
These people are like the pawns for the people that actually get in secret in rooms and make worldwide decisions. Though they are actually the pawns of those people. These
Because
people
they have the
believe.
money. You
Yeah.
have the money to do it. You know what I mean? So it's like when you get together, you have that gives you ability. So like, okay, me and you social, we got to, let's say I have $1 million, you have $1 million. We come together, we got $2 million. Say, well, what is the most we can do? We do it all the time in games. How much territory can we get? How much property can we buy? How much can we influence it? And then what do? Then you get more power, you get more ability by the more resources you acquire. You see, and that's all. And when you get more money, like when, okay, let's say now I'm a billionaire, I have more options available to me now. It's just like in a video game, when you get more money, you get more armor and more abilities and more power. Well, it's the same thing with money. Money gives you options in this world. Money is the key to power in this world and influence. And so I can be an idiot, but if I got $1 million, I can influence somebody way smarter than me to do something. I mean, it's just power, over people. Athletes, look at athletes, look how strong they are. Look how fast athletes are. And they do all the work while their masters gets paid billions, trillions. And they get crap if you really want to get down to it. And not only that, they have nothing of their own. The people don't see it, but money did that. Money is what yielded that man who had all that power to them to play in their league. And they're the ones who sat down and said we can make money off of this. You see, and then that's when they get people who are stronger and faster and smarter to do their bidding to make them money. But it's all money. It was all organized from a man's imagination. It was collapsed out of his mind into the world. And when you see all these things, I mean, they didn't get that idea from themselves. They just saw that that's what human beings do, because you look back in history and you see, man, people really have always liked Colosseums. Always. You see what I mean? And so, if you build it, they will come. They did that in the Field of Dreams with the baseball field in that movie. It said, build it, they will come. Hell yeah. Build it. They'll come. Build a church. They'll come. Hey, y'all get some money together and y'all get a property and build a church. They will come.
And that's
They
another
will come.
thing
All
they
them
do.
zombies will come to your church looking for that triune God in your walls. They will come.
And they do that in every city. They do that in every city because you have a church handing out food right by the where everybody's homeless and poor. Where do you think they're gonna gravitate towards? Come on.
Now I got another question. Let's be objective. What is Christianity but the triune God religion? In the event of its name,
Yeah, they
then
had to do that because they couldn't be mixed up with anybody else. They had to have absolute power. So they had to make sure their God wasn't the God of the Jewish Christian or the Christian or the Hebrew. So they had to make up that triune God. You see what I'm saying? To have absolute what you call it, segregation.
Yeah, sovereignty. Yeah, and in that, it's like the very name Christianity. This is a God. I mean, this is a religion centered on a man. Come on now. And this man was made into a part of the Trinitarian formula. Are we supposed to be dealing with a religion that is centering a man and making the man a part of a Trinitarian formula? Or is this text at its core Yahwism, the doctrine of the Creator? It's like this stuff can go in one ear and out the other. Like this stuff can be so beyond these people. You say Yahwism to these people, they have no reservation. It doesn't even register. Like a light bulb just doesn't come on. What is Yahwism? But what it is that we understand historically to be the actual integral teachings that came out of the mouth of Yah. Think about it. We got one that references the Creator intellectually and contextually. And then the other is a paradigm that centers a man. Now,
Right, brother.
no
And
disrespect, no disrespect to that man. We follow that man. We love that man. We appreciate that man. But what did he teach us? His doctrine or the doctrine of Yah? Now you.
and with that, brother, they also forget the name of the Creator. They're so hinged on following the doctrine that man gives them that they forget the name of the Creator to worship what?
Man, they don't know what, man. Them early people had no clue. They was making up all kinds of stuff, man. They had all types of ideas. All the Gnostics and all the heathen Gentile Christians, they didn't know. It was making everything up. That's why they got 50,000 doctrines probably of the Holy Spirit. They got how many views of Jesus? Jesus is the Father. Jesus is the second person. Christ is actually a spirit that came down on the man Jesus. Uh, Jesus is two natures in one person. Jesus is two natures and two hypostases in one person. You see what I mean? Like these people just making it up. Their religion is totally made up. They made up a religion that they defined as a theology based upon the nature of Christ. What the heck is that? What the heck is the nature of Christ? And then they start teaching what the nature of Christ is, and that's where you get all that stuff from. They'll be like, oh yeah, Nestorianism and a monarchical view, and we also have the patripastinistic view, and we have also the what the hell is this? All the meanwhile they're covetous and greedy and killing people, but they're acting like they're so freaking intellectual, like they're acting like they're so theological in these writings. They act like they're just really just seeking, the higher knowledge, while all the meanwhile jokes on you, because they're sitting here killing, raping, robbing, pillaging, causing extreme prejudice, writing stuff about Jews that are getting them excommunicated out of all nations. Good God, them are trifling people. That's a trifling man who's going to sit there and write something and then lie and respond to his damn self. This one guy was at Trifo and the Jews. He made him up. He made him up. And then he wrote this stuff, and then this affected people for real. Yeah, damn them people, man. Why are people acting like this? Tell me. What do you think? What is that psychosis? You said you study psychology. What is that damn psychosis where people are just like that, man? That somebody can sit there and murder somebody and kill somebody and rob and steal, and they'll trust them the next day because they say, well, I changed. What is that? What's that called? Like why they're so willing to accept Paul. What is that psychosis? Like the man was a murderer, he killed people, and then they'll just accept him wholeheartedly for their salvation no matter what he says. Even if he says, stick your face in that damn idol, dang sacrifice to an idol and eat it, they'll do it. What is that psychosis called?
Or what was that question? I had walked away for a second.
What would be the psychosis called if somebody like in society was seen as an extreme, non-approachable, like a murderer or a rapist or something like that? And then because the man tells you, "Oh, well, I've changed," and then he tells you, "Hey, let's say the next day he says, I changed, and I'm from God." He says, "Eat this food, sacrifice to idols, and now you'll do it." What is that psychosis? What is the psychosis to where somebody can do wicked things, evil things, and then the next day, for whatever reason, somebody follow this person and trust them for their eternal life? What is that psychosis?
I'm gonna be honest. The person who follows that person is more psychotic than the person, trying to convince them, in some sense. But it would both they would both have to be diagnosed.
Yeah, on the front end, what you're dealing with is a narcissist. That's narcissism. Does that make sense? Because narcissism is a person that's highly diabolical, highly manipulative, highly predatory. You see, because narcissists basically feed off of, you know, uh, power, control. Um, they feed off of being able to use people, for their own devices, for their own, appeasement. Um, they feed off of being able to do so in an unfettered way. So as far as like a extremely unapproachable psychosis that turns around and, you know, puts people in position to kind of like feed
It's
into
called,
that
I seen it,
narrative.
brother. They call it delusional disorder. That's what I'm looking for. It says a delusional disorder is a type of psychotic disorder. The main symptom is the presence of one or more delusions, which are unshakable beliefs in something. Which are unshakable beliefs in something. So that's what I mean. They because they have an unshakable belief that the man isn't a murderer anymore, but he's still out there murdering. That's called a delusional disorder. So it's delusion. That's all.
Okay, yeah, I got you. I thought you was asking about the person that's
But I didn't
unapproachable
know it was
versus the
that
people that
simple.
would follow.
You know what I mean? Like it
Strong
seems much
delusion.
more diabolical, but it's just delusion.
It is a strong delusion. Even the Bible diagnoses it as a strong delusion. That's funny,
Right.
The psychologist and the
Well, it's
Well, I drove
interesting
by a
because it
Catholic
says
church.
these people who are delusional have unshakable beliefs. Damn.
Unshakable, like this person. That's why it's so crazy to me how this became a custom that these people could not even read their own Bibles, and these people would follow them faithfully, knowing this is their oppressor. Oh, but their oppressor gives them food. Their oppressor gives them sanctuary. Their oppressor gives them a sliver of hope if you come on Sunday. And if you don't come on Sunday and you're doing your own worship on a different day, we're gonna kill you. That's what they were doing, and it became a custom that you couldn't read your own religious text. That's the crazy thing to me, and people still adhere to this custom. Like I drove by a Catholic church yesterday. I was just going to the store, right? I drive by. I didn't even know that they were going to be meeting there. I didn't think about it, right? But I drove by. Man, bunch of girls out there wearing clothes so tight. And on my way back, I'm driving by, and I guess they ended their service. There's an old woman out there dressed modestly. She's robed up in her garbs with the blue and gray and white or whatever. She had the thing around her neck. I guess she was a whatever you call her.
But then there was these kids over there just standing around, these guys this time standing around just talking like they were gonna go get into some mischief, like they couldn't wait to leave, you know. And I'm like, this is crazy, you know. They didn't even, you know, none of them had a Bible in their hand, none of them. And these are all people that are youth. I'm like, where are? What did they learn today? Nothing. You know, they have three crosses up outside their building and a statue of an idol of either a man or an angel, right? They idolize. So yet these signs are all around them. They don't question it. They know they're doing wrong. They're just following the customs of their parents, of their community, and that's wrong. That's wrong on them because they should know better, and it's wrong on them for continuing that custom without ever questioning it.
Yeah, this is critical because, like, for example, you know, for the little bit that I did here, you know, when you talked about that unapproachable psychosis, that's what I was honing in on as far as the narcissism. You see what I'm saying? In terms of the person that the people are following, which is critical because when you talk about the narcissist and the people that follow a narcissist, that's a shared psychotic disorder. They also call that ado, folly ado, right, and or folly a pleasure. When you have more than two people involved, this condition occurs when a dominant individual with delusional beliefs, in case the narcissist has strong influence over one or more people that adopt the same delusions, right? Folly ado. That psychiatric syndrome involves a close relationship, you know, where one person you see has a psychotic disorder, and these delusions are
Hey, brother
transferred.
Talmud. So
Yeah.
if you believe that that's a delusion,
Uh huh.
then you can be healed from it, right? You can get rid of that mental illness.
Absolutely. Uh huh.
Because if you realize that Christianity or Islam or Judaism is just a delusion, then that breaks the belief, which is
Correct.
really the root of the symptom of the mental illness, right?
Correct. 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 And in that, that's the whole, I would say, substance of even the new covenant, because the new covenant is to bring about a new heaven and a new earth, and a new heaven speaks to a new ordered and structured ruling class, if you will, or leadership, and that leadership is held to standards associated with establishing an egalitarian society, which, you know, to say it plainly, creates an environment you see where there is no lording and mastering over other people. Like, for example, you see how the Messiah was instructing his people to, you know, create this dynamic in Ephesians chapter, I believe it's Ephesians chapter 5, where it says, Ephesians chapter 5, where it says, don't lord. You see, like, to be an example to the flock, right? But don't rule over them or don't lord over them. See, this whole dynamic that we have in terms of the intelligence associated with what was being constructed at the behest of the teachings of the Messiah is creating an environment to rid and or purge the community of the narcissistic disposition that people can have in terms of vying for leadership or power, to the point to where once a person finds himself in that kind of position, they're unapproachable. You can't check them. You can't correct them. You see what I'm saying? That is absolutely not consistent with the teachings here, because when you have instructions to be an example, you know, to the flock and not lord over the flock, you see, that's for the purpose of people being able to heal from environments where people were lording and mastering over people, you know, in a very counterproductive way. And those principles are basically put in place to not only bring healing, you know, to individuals, but to bring healing to a society, you see, or bring healing to a community in terms of how the community is ordered, if that makes sense. No, I was appealing the first. Let me get that.
Do you think that they've mythicized the truths of God? Like,
Absolutely,
yeah, and
absolutely,
they've given it in story form,
absolutely.
which has been given to a childlike mind in order to shake their reality, right? So this delusion is a strong one. It really is,
Hmm.
because if a delusion is an unshakable belief in something,
Hmm.
right, that is contradictive to reality,
Hmm.
then that would mean any false religion or false system would be delusional. Isn't that
Hmm.
correct?
Hmm.
Okay.
And see that's a dynamic question that you just asked, and it really, really needs, to really be understood. As pertains to how true it is. Because when we're dealing with a program or when we're dealing with a narrative you see associated with quote unquote Christianity, where the principles of the kingdom of heaven have been mystified, which means they've been over spiritualized outside of their actual cultural context to the extent to where they're not even spiritual anymore, as pertains to what these people communicated as to what they understood spirituality to be. So when you mystify the principles of the kingdom of heaven, you see, to the extent to where they're not even integral to the authorial intent of the text, what you have is a manuscript that's been neutered, if you will, with mercy in my heart, at least in the minds of the people. The text itself, the words of the Most High themselves will never be neutered. They will never be weak. They will never be uh, unable to affect people in a tangible and practical way when it comes to the liberation and the healing that the principles of the kingdom of heaven are to bring. But if a person is able to put lenses on people that cause people to look at the words of the Most High in ways that's not consistent with what it was that these people were communicating as being inspired by the Ruach of the Most High, what you have is a people who have been divorced from the politics and the spirituality, you see, of the scriptures. You cannot have this spiritual uh, construct that is the scripture and separate it from its political implications, because the politics go hand in hand with the spirituality. And what I mean by that is this: the laws of the Most High give you the ability to run freely after the things of the Most High spiritually. So this is like, say for example, if you want to be able to do whatever it is that your career is at a high level, you see what I'm saying, you need instruction and you need information in order for you to get to a point to where you're proficient in your profession, and you're able to pretty much do that in a way that's second nature. You need training and instruction on the front end, and that's what the laws of the Most High are. But when you get to a point of maturity, to the extent to where these things have been internalized and these things are a part of you, now you can act on the instruction that you've received, and that more so has to do with what you truly are at your core. Like, what's a part of your mind frame? What's a part of how you see the world? What's a part of how you go about your business and your profession? You see what I'm saying? So you cannot have the scriptures without their politics, and you cannot have, you see what I'm saying, the scriptures, you see, even without their spirituality. They go hand in hand. Now let me look at First Peter chapter 5, because what they took out of the text is the politics, and the politics, you see what I'm saying, is putting people in the positions to absorb all kind of spirits that are not of the creator. See, you cannot operate according to the laws of the Most High without the spirit of the Most High. See, the spirit of the Most High operates within his laws, because the laws are giving order to an environment where people are able to mature in what it is that the Most High expects of them, in terms of how he intends for them to perform, how he intends for them to interact with one another, how he intends for them to tend to one another. So the laws are barriers, if you will, of protection for the community of faith, in order for the community of faith to be full of the spirit of the creator in a tangible and practical way. You cannot butcher, you see, the kingdom the way that these Christians have, and find yourself operating in the fruit of what the scripture actually does teach. In First Peter chapter 5, verse 1, it says, "Elders which are among you I exhort, and who am also an elder of the witness of the sufferings of the Mashiach." We have to understand, what did the Mashiach suffer for? The Mashiach suffered, you see, to establish the Torah, so that the people would be able to be free to worship the Most High in spirit and in truth. So they would be unfettered. There would be no hindrances to them being able to live their lives unto the Most High in spirit and in truth. Because again, you cannot have the spirituality that the Father expects for the people to internalize and realize without the structure necessary in order for people to grow and or mature into that spirituality, right? That's what the Messiah suffered for. He suffered to establish that order, right? To liberate the people. This is why you see Paul talking about these people are coming to spy out our liberty, because these people have gone after narratives and concepts, you see what I'm saying, that are not integral to what the Father inspired. So the people were not free to worship the Most High in spirit and in truth, because they were hamstrung by narratives that were diametrically opposed, you see, to the politics of the kingdom of heaven. See, and these people being subverted by these narratives cause these people to be bound by things that kept them from being able to run freely after the principles of the kingdom of heaven. This is what the Messiah suffered for. The Messiah suffered to liberate people from concepts like acculturation stress, whereas these people having a background that conflicted with the principles of the culture that they supposedly were supposed to represent, you see, it caused them to have tension, and it caused them to have issues with humbling themselves and just simply obeying the Father, because everything about them, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, was wired to operate within a paradigm that had nothing to do with the Father and what it is that He desired for the people to be tending to in real life. See, this is the suffering. We're suffering to actually experience a real transformation in every way. So we would be freed from narratives, freed from political principles or what have you, freed from the influence of a society that we would have more so been immersed in on the front end, so we could actually become people who are products of the societal narrative that the Father intends for His people to be an accurate representative of. And in that, that's when you see actual salvation and actual liberation taking place, because people are now being allowed, you see, to experience, I would say, a level of maturity and growth that would have been otherwise impossible in a world that seeks to arrest your development. See, what you said as far as giving to a child like mine is important, because these people being subverted by these narratives are in a world where people are not looking for you to truly mature and reach your full potential. They're not looking for you to truly become a man mentally. They're not looking for you to be, for a sister to become a woman mentally, which is why in these societies you see a lot of immaturity. You can see 20, 30, 40, 50-year-old kids, because they're dwelling in environments that are keeping them from focusing on things that actually enable the mind to reach its potential. The Most High's paradigm is that it is about you reaching your potential, you becoming a whole man, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. A sister becoming a whole woman, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. This is the suffering of the Messiah, to be liberated from counterproductive norms, fam. See, feed the flock of Elohim which is among you, taking oversight thereof, not by constraint. See, this is how people get freed from that shared psychosis, that narcissist, uh, disposition along with the people who internalize the psychosis because of their being subjugated under a ruling class that is consumed with a balance between narcissism and sociopathy. When you have a paradigm where people are charged to take care of the community of faith, but not with but not with constraint. You're not to constrain people. You're not to be controlling in ways that's unnecessary. This is the antithesis. This is a remedy for narcissism because there is no being controlling in ways that's unnecessary. In the community of faith, we're not subject to no man's personal will or desires. We are only subjected to the will and the desire of the Creator, and those principles have to do with people being moral and how they govern themselves and their people, and anything else other than that is unacceptable and is not to be tolerated in any way, shape, form, or fashion. This is a text that teaches us to be justified in whatever role or responsibility that we inhabit, meaning that if a man is going to be a man, he going to have to be justified for whatever role or responsibility that he has. He going to have to be justified to be a husband. He going to have to be justified to be a father. He going to have to be justified, you see, within whatever business he goes into. This is a life that's about training in a tangible and practical way so people can actually have the tools, the resources, and the accoutrements necessary to actually be effective, you see, in whatever role or responsibility that they have. Because they've actually been given the equipment to be effective, and that has to do with how you move, think, and speak at its core. That has to do with what kind of person you are at your core. See, you don't have people being put in a position to teach and preach and things of that nature if they have not been justified. If it's not justifiable to say, okay, I see this man is patient. I see this man is gentle. I see this man is faithful. I see this man, you see, has a skill. He don't apply too much pressure. He don't apply too little. This is a refined human being. It's justifiable to put him in this position. We don't put people in positions in the community of faith that they are not equipped, you see, to fulfill. We don't do that. That's why the text teaches us, lay hands on no man suddenly. We don't put our stamp of approval on people that don't have the discipline sufficient for whatever it is that they call themselves wanting to endeavor in. And how do you accomplish that? You do that by not allowing people to be things like controlling in ways that's unnecessary. We not substantiating no morals that the Most High didn't give us. See, this is where men go off. They get to trying to substantiate their own morals in their own views, what they think is right or wrong. That's the tree of knowledge and good and evil. When man get to doing what he think is right or wrong according to him. See, but willingly, not for filthy lucre, but of a ready mind. We don't do what we do for resources. This is not a paradigm of materialism or consumerism to the point to where we neglect the more integral virtues that are essential to functional community. Things like humility, things like being grateful, things like being able to keep it simple, things like being content with what you have so you can be, I would say, liberated from the hamster wheel that is a feudal system or a capitalist system that always puts you in a position to want more, that puts you in a position so you can, to a degree, flirt and or be consumed with greed. Neither being as an Adonim over Elohim's heritage. So we're not lording over the Most High's people, but being examples to the flock. This life is not about us trying to be in positions where we can just tell people what to do. No, this life is about being an example as to what the Father expects of us all. And that example has to do with self examination, that has to do with introspection, it has to do with true discernment. And true discernment is not just sitting up, looking up, and trying to discern everything going on with everybody else. True discernment is being able to discern what's going on in you. to make certain that you are walking upright according to the principles of the kingdom of heaven, to make certain that you are reflecting, you see, the fruit of the Ruach, to make certain that you are in alignment with the morals and the values that the Most High intends for us to exemplify, to make certain that you are being careful in the things you do and say, to make certain that you're not getting in the way of the Most High and or His people as far as the progress that's expected, that's mandated, and that's non-negotiable when it comes to the principles of the kingdom of heaven. And I yield with that.
Yeah, that's good, brother. I've been looking at some of these delusional disorders too. You have the arithmetic, which means people with this type of delusion disorder believe that another person, often someone of important or famous, is in love with them, right? They may attempt to contact the person of the delusion and engage in stalking behavior. So that's basically the triune God. They believe that this God is in love with them. They believe this triune God loves them. And so they attempt to contact this person to engage him in stalking behavior. There's also the grandiose delusion. The grandiose delusion is when people with this type of delusional disorder have an overflated sense of self worth, power, knowledge, or identity. They may believe they have a great talent or have made an important discovery. See, and that's exactly that religion appeals to that type of person, right? With the triune God. Because now it gives them self worth, power, it gives them identity, right? And even if you see here, it says they think that they may have discovered something extremely important. And so you see this with like the Pentecostals who are faking tongues and doing all that stuff. That's a grandiose delusion, meaning that they themselves believe they have a talent they don't. They believe they have a gift that they don't. Like when people say, God gave me his Holy Spirit, that would be a grandiose delusion because they believe they're so special, which stems from their arithmetic delusion, that somebody greater than them is in love with them. And so it filters into this grandiose delusion of that he has given them special power or a gift. They call it the Holy Spirit. There's also the jealous delusion. People with this type of delusion disorder believe that their spouse or sexual partner is unfaithful without any concrete evidence. You see this stuff? This is wild, man. It goes into a whole bunch of other ones too, but I just wanted to bring those two out because it seems to me like when it speaks of the negative symptoms that begin to arise from these issues of delusion, I mean, it matches the so-called apologist, very well. I mean, just very well. All these symptoms.
So when you talk about, that the Most High has given one something very important, right? That's critical because that's pretty much how quote unquote Christian pastors teach. It's all about forever learning but never coming into the knowledge of the truth. And what that means is these people are sitting up always talking about they learning stuff, but what they learning is never consistent with the facts or the truth of the matter. And that's critical because that's how they can read the Bible. You see what I'm saying? And they can be like, God told me this or God told me that. And then they bring out some kind of revelation that sounds good. You see what I'm saying? That can get people, I would say the untrained ear, emotionally stirred up, but it don't have nothing to do with what the text is actually saying, or it don't have nothing to do with the context or the truth of the matter. That is exactly what we see going on with Mercy in My Heart and Christian. Let me give you an example. Matthew 15. It says, Verse 10. And he called the multitude and said to them, hear and understand. It's not that which goes out of the mouth that defiles a man. Oh, I'm sorry, that goes into the mouth that defiles a man, but that which comes out of his mouth that defiles a man. See, God told me that y'all don't need to be worrying about no dietary law. Y'all don't need to be worried about eating no pork or no bacon. Y'all don't need to be worrying about none of that. You just need to worry about what's coming out of your mouth. Is what's coming out of your mouth hate? Is what's coming out of your mouth judgment? Is what's coming out of your mouth the works of the law, by which no man will be justified? Is what's coming out of your mouth love? Because that is the first and great commandment, that you shall love God. See, it ain't about what you put in your mouth. It's about what's coming out of your mouth. See, it's what's coming out of your mouth, the love of God. And the second commandment, to love your neighbor as yourself. See, you can eat whatever it is that you want to eat. Don't you be listening to no plate police. See, you see what I'm saying? That's what they do. That's exactly what that is. You see that? Talking about they got something that was extremely revelatory, something extremely important. But the reality of it is, when you look at the context of Matthew chapter 15, the Messiah is rebuking the Pharisees for annulling the commandments and making the commandments of no effect. He's rebuking the Pharisees for that. And if he's saying you can put whatever in your mouth that you want in your mouth, then that means that he's making the commandments of no effect. So is the Messiah rebuking the Pharisees for making the laws of the Most High to no effect? And he's doing the same thing at the same time? If so, make that make sense. Hell,
Hey, peace, y'all. Shalom. Hey, you know which one gets me is when they talk about, I got a relationship. It's about having a relationship with God. But how can you have a relationship with somebody or anything if you continuously do the things that they say they hate? You know, it's impossible. You know, um, they, like what you said, the dietary law. Everything like that. You sitting up here claiming to have a relationship with somebody that don't even work in the life we live today, like in the physical form, in the worldly life. Even between sinners. You know, if you're saying that you got a relationship with somebody, but you continuously doing the things that they hate, it could lead to a whole lot of turmoil and trouble and whatever. But then now when we get to the Most High, you saying that you could do anything, that he hates and still be good. And I think that the one of the main reasons why that is the case is because people is like what you guys are saying, like they stray away from the instructions that the Most High gave us. He literally told you everything that he hates. He laid out 6 things that the Lord hates, right? And then he also gives you examples in there what he hates, oppression of people, all this other stuff, having other gods, doing all this other stuff. And we continuously go against it, because somebody says that it's okay to do it, you know. But that's a real strong delusion too, is you not even knowing what the commandments of God is, because it's always some, ambiguous thing that they say that don't even make sense in the New Testament, because they'll tell you, oh, all you got to do is these 2 commandments: love your brother and love God, right? But then you get to a place in the New Testament where it says you can't eat bloody meat. Now, what's going on now? You know, or when you can't serve idols, or even when you see Zacchaeus and when he's talking about oppressing the people and cheating them out of their money, you know, which I don't even believe that he was doing that. I think he was like, I wasn't cheating these people, and if they did, then I would just pay them back anyway. But you know, we see all of these things, but then all you're talking about is loving God and loving your neighbor. And then so I it's just these people are being led astray, and they're full of delusion, like you guys were saying. I think I came in kind of late, but I think it's a great conversation the way it is going. Yeah, bottom line though, you can't have a relationship with
Hey,
anybody.
Vinny,
Yeah, yeah.
let me ask you this. How do you love your wife, Vinny?
Right. You gotta you gotta do what she likes, man. You can't be doing the things that she hates.
Hey, so look. Yeah, love God. Yeah, 110%. How you love him? That's the simple question you gotta ask people. How you love him?
Yeah, and that's the fault they falter at, with these, because they got all these ambiguous definitions. Then they'll take you to some place in Matthew where you talking about, oh, this is how you love people right here, and it lists about 4 or 5 things, you know, but they all tie back into the commandments. It's kind of crazy.
Hey, Vinny, what happens when you think you're doing something right by your wife and she tells you, no, that's not what I love? What happens then? Hey, is she lying? Oh, no, 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 she ain't lying. She telling the truth.
Yeah, I thought you wanted this menage a trois.
Right. And she turns around and says, nah, you tell God, I thought that we, no. See, I didn't say that. The false prophet told you that.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, man. It's wild as heck, man. I don't
Hey,
understand
you
it, man.
offend, sorry, I gotta put this in. You offend your
Yeah.
wife, you offend your wife in one point. She gon' act like you don't care, you don't care about anything. You may have just messed up on getting the wrong perfume. You got everything else right. You got the wrong perfume. She on your grass. That's why you can't offend in one part of the law and not expect to break all of them. You see.
Hey, but even in business though, too, right? I mean, you can't just go around offending people in business either. You got a business relationship with people. You guys got an understanding of what you need, what your responsibilities are, and the other person's responsibilities are. You know, and I was just talking to some people last Shabbat. Right, we were having a conversation, and that's what we were saying, man. We was like that covenant is a covenant. You know, yeah, the laws are in it, and I think Talmud be bringing up this point a lot. But the laws are in that covenant. But guess what's also in that covenant? It's you saying that you're going to do it, or the people saying that they're going to do what the Most High asked, and then the Most High saying that He's going to protect you and be your God. That's the covenant. You know what I'm saying? The laws are included in that covenant, but that's what it is. You know, and people don't quite understand that. They think that the laws themselves are the covenant, and it just kills people, man. Kills people left and right, because they be way off. You know. So if you don't understand that, then yeah, you're in a strong delusion. You're walking around in darkness. You can't even find your way to the light because you don't even recognize what the light looks like from what the darkness looks like. You so happy waddling around in the dark, that you're not even paying attention to the light, that it can't be good. And that's That's the main issue, man. Is these people, man. You know, you
Hey
got to
man,
study for
Vinny,
yourself.
what's a covenant? A covenant's a contract, right? What's a ketubah? Ketubah is a marriage contract. You know, basically, more or less the same thing. You know, the reason why I keep on mentioning wife, I mean, if anyone don't have a wife here, may God bless you with one. But it's very interesting what the Most High does. He does this. He says that he's divorced Israel. He's divorced Judah at one point. Why does he keep on making these analogies for? Um, you know, he wants us to be one with him, just like we're one with our wives. You know, I see that in Malachi chapter 2, verses 15. He literally uses this. God, through Prophet Malachi, literally uses this. He tells the people, yo, you lot being unfaithful, man. Yo, I would have gathered you together from 2 to 1. You know, I'm obviously roughly paraphrasing. What did God desire? He desired godly offspring that would worship him. You know, so when we look at us being one with the Most High, look at it is that. It means to be one in spirit. One in spirit. When you're one in spirit, right? You've signed that ketubah. You signed that contract, man. You said, yeah, I'll do the things that you said we should do. And then people want to turn around and say, yo, the contract was renewed. I renewed my vows. And then they tell you, yo, hey, them rules, them regulations, those vows in the contract, yeah, they don't mean nothing now. You know, I can go around eating pork. You know, that's what they say. It's like it's weird as well because, and I know I'm continuing. I'm going on. I'm gonna finish on this one. It's extremely weird when you do it when you put it in that analogy. Okay, God's our husband, we're his wife. He has a ketubah with us. That's what that we call the covenant, and these are the rules and regulations of it. You know, if you break faith with your wife, hey, she's all in well's right to divorce you. Vice versa. If your wife is unfaithful, guess what? You got all the right to divorce her. But look at that. What's unfaithfulness? Unfaithfulness is unfaithful to the things written in the ketubah, in the contract, in the covenant. So what people really doing? People really want to be divorced from God. That's what they want to be. They want to have they don't want God's face turned towards them. They want God's face turned away from them. They don't want to behold the face of Elohim. They didn't want see, look, with Moses it's not so. Moses asks to see his glory and God says, yo, look, hey, I can't show you my face. And you know, for me, I believe that's his literal face, right? I can't show you my face, but you can see my back, you know. What's this? What do you mean see my back? Where did he get the Torah from? You think the Torah is God's face or you think the Torah is God's back? That's what I like to ask people. The Torah, the contract. What you see? What's this contract for? Why did God tell us, yo, keep this, keep the Torah? Why he say that? So you can draw closer to Him, so you can get the promise. Oh my God, what's the promise? The promise is eternal life. Tommy said it earlier. He did not come to destroy the law, but to establish it. He established it by doing what he done, and he was glorified for his obedience and faith. He was fully married to God, fully married. Didn't transgress in one part of the ketubah. I'm done. I'm gonna mute up there. God praise.
Yeah, that's a fact. And you know what the funny thing is, man? It's like the funny thing is, we take it for granted, you know. we take all this stuff for granted because we have a literal Bible that's been put together for us that these people didn't even never have. You know, if you was poor, or if you know you weren't of the affluent people back then, you wasn't gonna have no writings. You know, you weren't gonna have none of that stuff. So you had to go to people in order to get the information. You know, and now we got all this information at the click of a button, and we won't even use it. You know, we just still continue to think that we gotta literally go to these people who don't know anything in order to get the information. Right. I want to just read this text right quick. Um, and this is what the people were doing. They were leading them astray. And this would led up to the New Testament and the rebuke of the elders and those who were in charge. This is Jeremiah 23. It says, "Woe to the shepherds who destroy and scatter the sheep of my pasture, says the Lord. Therefore, thus says the Lord thy God of Israel against the shepherds who feed my flock, my people. You have scattered my flock, driven them away, and not attended to them. Behold, I will attend to you for the evil of your doing, says the Lord. But I will gather the remnant of my flock out of all countries where I've driven them, and bring them back to their folds, and they shall be fruitful and increase. I will set up shepherds over them who will feed them, and they shall fear no more, nor be dismayed, nor shall they be lacking, says the Lord. But behold, the days are coming, says the Lord, that I will raise to David a branch of righteousness. A king shall reign and prosper and execute judgment and righteousness in the earth. In his days, Judah will be saved and Israel will dwell safely. Now this is his name by which he will be called, the Lord our righteousness. Right? We read over this passage and we don't even take into consideration that these shepherds are the pastors, is what is translated as into the English. Most a lot of times we don't even realize that these people were leading these people astray. Why? Because they didn't have no writings for themselves, and even if they did find the writings, most of them couldn't even understand it. Like we see that with what is that, the Egyptian or the eunuch with Philip, after he baptized them. But it's the same way today, man. People are not reading these texts, And this dude, I think he just had the scroll of Isaiah. So how you gonna read Isaiah and understand it, you know, if you don't have anything else behind it to go with it? You're not really gonna understand it, right? But we have all of this stuff at our disposal, man. We have texts that line up with other texts, and software and stuff where we can pull words and phrases and connect them to other words and phrases, and just do our own research. And we not really doing the due diligence, man. It's like, I think Eliyahu was bringing it out a while back, putting the wineskins, the old, putting new wine into old wineskins. You can't do that because the old wineskin is just gonna, taint it or whatever. But I mean, that's the whole purpose, man. Like we really gotta get out of this stupor that we in, because uh, we've been tricked a lot, man. And people just are just happy sitting on their hands, you know, thinking that they don't have to do nothing. Like there ain't no work that we got to do, you know. And you know what the point I even hate is when you call somebody lawless, right? They're like, "Oh, I'm not lawless because we keep laws." Yeah, but Jesus called the Pharisees and the elders lawless, and they was keeping laws too. So lawless is just not a thing where you're not keeping anything. It's you despising the Most High's laws. That's what that's what a lawless person is, and you adding to the word, you know. So yeah, you are lawless because you don't want to do anything that he says to do, you know. And it's crazy, man. You reading a whole text that has a foundation, but you're separating what's being said later from its foundation. Is just madness, man. And like what you was talking about, delusional. Yeah, all these people, man, they just telling you, man. You listen to the Muslims. The Muslims like, well, the Jews was lying. All their works were wrong, and Muhammad came to put us back on track. But then Muhammad got a whole law that differs from the instructions that God gave us, right? That's in the Torah, right? Judaism, they deal with a whole lot of traditions. You can even see that in the text I just read in Jeremiah 23, where the shepherds were leading the flock astray. Even Jesus was like, "Man, you break the Most High," and I'm paraphrasing. Forgive me. You break the Most High's commandments for the sake of your own tradition. You know, and it's crazy, man. All of this stuff that we do, man, is definitely a delusion. And the sad part is, God said that He was going to send them strong delusion that they would believe a lie. Why? Because that's what they wanted anyway. Ain't that funny? God gives you whatever you want, right? He gonna give you whatever you want. You want to be a lawless sinner? Guess what? He's gonna treat you like the prodigal son. He gonna let you go out there and do everything, and then when you get down on your luck and everything is just broken, everything is taken away from you, then guess what? You ain't got nobody to acknowledge but him. You know, he'll definitely give you whatever you want. Let me read this one text too. This is a Wisdom of Solomon. Let me get it right quick. But he'll definitely give you over to it. That was said throughout the Tanakh and in this Apocrypha. But I'm gonna read this Wisdom of Solomon right quick. Hold on, bear with me. Let's see here. Okay. No, that's not it. Dang, man. I lost it. Okay. All right. I don't know where it's at. Let's see here. Yeah, but it's just crazy, man. Now people just like what you said, Tahir, about the new covenant, man. People think that God just eliminated all his laws because people couldn't keep what he was saying to do. That's the new covenant. The new covenant is Jesus would bring his own laws and release us from that bondage that we could not do and that we kept getting punished for, you know?
Hey, Vinny, I'm sorry to interrupt him, but you know how stupid that is? Like, when I hear people say, "Oh, the law imprisoned us. That's why we don't have to keep the commandments." You like, people are stupid because you know how much more you're in bondage now. You know when it says under sin, or we're under the law, or we're imprisoned by the law. Oh my God, people really think this means you have to do the law. You have to keep the righteousness of the commandments. No, when it says you're imprisoned by the law or under the law, it means you're under the judgments or penalties of the law because you did not keep the law. This is what Galatians 3 is going into. Galatians 3, 22, 23. People read this and think, yeah, we don't have to keep the law anymore because if we keep the law, guess what? We're under bondage. No, you're under bondage if you don't keep the law, and guess what? You're imprisoned unto damnation. That's what you're not getting. Um, yeah, man, it's stupid. When people start saying stuff like that, I just automatically switch off. I don't want no conversation because you can tell they got a strong delusion on them.
Yeah, and the funny thing is when it says that he needs a new covenant, it's because they actually separated themselves from God's covenant and attached them to one with death. That's what it says in Isaiah 28, right? But look, I didn't find the one that I was looking for, but I did find this one. Look at what this one says. This is Wisdom of Solomon 2, right? And this is 23. It said, "For God made man to be immortal and made him to be an image of his own eternity." Verse 24, "Nevertheless, through envy of the devil came death into the world, and they that do hold of his side do find it." Ain't that something, man? That means that it all boils down to who you head? Is it God or is it the deceiver? You, you, yeah. If you put God as your head, what does it lead to? It leads to life. But if you put the deceiver as your head, then guess what? That leads to death. You know, we already saw the different body structures. You know, if you in God, then you dealing with the same spirit. But if you're not, then you're like following one of those beasts in Daniel. You know, where the stuff don't even mix. What does it say? Oil, clay and iron. You know, they don't mix, but they came together. And then after a while, they just broke to pieces because uh, and I'm and I'm giving my own thing here. Don't say that, Daniel, but but you could see that they broke to pieces because they weren't really. You know what I'm saying? But let me read that Isaiah 28 right quick, so you can see what type of covenant they attached themselves to that they needed to be broken from. This is why they needed a new covenant. They strayed away from the Most High's covenant. They got the punishments, which to your point, Sair, is actually listed in the blessings and the cursings. Like everything before them is listed in those curses if they didn't keep after saying that they would. And I got a red bar, so let me know if I'm not coming in. Um, but this is
Nah,
Isaiah.
you
Okay, this is Isaiah 28. Let me find it here. There we go. Isaiah 28. I have to scroll down a little bit. Okay, here we go. It says, okay, here we go, right here. Verse 13, it says, but the word of the Lord was upon them. Well, now I'm going to start there, start right here. Um, verse 15, it says, because ye have said, we have made a covenant with death, and with hell are we at agreement. When the overflowing scourge shall pass through, it shall not come unto us. For we have made lies our refuge, and under falsehood have hid ourselves. Therefore, thus saith the Lord God, behold, I lay in Zion a foundation, a stone, a tried stone, a precious stone, a sure foundation. He that believeth shall not make haste. Judgment also will I lay to the line, and righteousness to the plummet. And the hail shall sweep away the refuge of lies, and the water shall overflow the hiding places. That means he's purging the wickedness out of there, right? And your covenant with death shall be disannulled, and your agreement with hell shall not stand. When the overflowing scourge shall pass through, then ye shall be trodden down by it, right? Ain't that funny? He says, then your covenant with hell shall be disannulled, and your agreement with hell shall not stand. You know what's funny is when you read those laws of the headship of a husband or a father over the wife or the daughter in Numbers, right? What does that say? It says that the husband has the right if a wife makes a covenant, right, or an agreement to something, and the husband does not approve of it, then he can disannul it. He can have it disannulled. And if he does have it disannulled, then none of those punishments will stand. The wife will not be held to those agreements anymore, right? If we look at it like, how we're presented as a bride in the New Testament, you know, and the husband is coming to disannul those things and then break that covenant with death. That's I mean, look at the correlation, right? And look at the correlation with Adam. Adam didn't do that. Adam had to, he could have. I know people say that the law wasn't around back then, but I don't know. I just find a lot of evidence saying that it is. You know, and that if Adam would have not eaten from that fruit of that tree, then I believe that would have been that thing would have been broken. But he didn't keep them commandments. So therefore, if you read further down, it says that it, I'm butchering it all. I don't really want to butcher it. But if you read further down, it says something to the nature of, and I know one of you brothers who know the passage can know what I'm talking about. But it says that if you read further down, it says that if the husband allows it and then comes back later and tries to deny it again, then guess what? they're going to all face the punishment, and they're all going to be. It's all going to be held to them. You know, but it's a trip how when you get to this marriage conversation and you start reading all of this stuff about covenant this, covenant that, like you said, agreement this, agreement that, and then how Israel is made like the bride, and the people are made as the or Christ is made as the husband, under the headship of the Most High, you know uh, when you start reading all this marriage language and you seeing all these covenants, man, it's like what you said, man. It's just pretty evident, you know. But people don't even realize that Isaiah 28 is talking about the covenant that they had to be broken from. It's the covenant of death. And where did that covenant of death come from? It came from breaking the commandments, breaking your covenant with the Most High when you said that you would follow Him. So most of these people that's coming under a covenant uh, today are coming under a covenant under false pretenses that have nothing to do with what the Bible is saying. So now, now you're circumcising yourselves into something into death. You're circumcising yourselves into death, right? Because Most High, as He said, to do it, right? And it's a trip. But I'm going on. I know I'm rambling, so I'm gonna go ahead and yield out. But
Yeah, look at this. I set before you today a blessing and a curse. A blessing if you keep the laws, statutes, and commandments which I command thee this day. A curse if you do not follow the laws, statutes, and commandments that I command you this day, and you go after other gods. Um, this what Deuteronomy says. That's how simple it is. So when you look at the covenant, right? It's one covenant, but there's two stipulations in the covenant. So you can say that this is the covenant of life and good, or you can say it's the covenant of death and evil. Why? Because depending on what you are doing to either keep the covenant or not keep the covenant, that's how the covenant will be unto you. That's really what it is. So when you get to Isaiah 28, which you beautifully read and beautifully explained, when they're saying, look, I made a covenant with death, they're not saying they made some new covenant. They're saying that the covenant they had made became death unto them. That's what he's talking about. And when you the whole marriage, the marriage thing is very important. I think people 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 really messed that up. Let me even read it because I mentioned it earlier, but now I want to read it. In Malachi 2, actually, before I even read that, look at this. Malachi 2:2. If you will not listen, if you will not take into heart to give honor to my name, says the Lord of hosts, then I will send the curse upon you, and I will curse you, pardon me. Sorry, I'll read it again. And I will curse your blessings. Indeed, I have already cursed them because you do not lay it to heart. What did they not lay it to heart? If you will not take to heart to give honor to my name, that name there is authority. If you don't put in your heart the honor of my name, the honor of my authority, everything that I've done through the prophets, everything that I've got written down through the prophets, everything that I've ever said to you, every miracle I've ever done, hey, look, if you don't get down with it, look, I'm going to turn them blessings into curses. But guess what? I have already cursed them. Why? Because you did not lay it to heart. This is why he always talks about, changing the heart from a rocky heart to a fleshy heart. But that's besides my point. My point is right here in Malachi 2:13. Look what it says. And this second thing you do. So look at the second thing they do. You cover the Lord's altar with tears, with weeping and groaning, because he no longer regards the offering or accepts it with favor from your hands, or from your hand. Please forgive me. So you cry, you weep, you groan, because you're trying to offer, but God don't accept that offering from your hand. Then it says, but you say, why does he not? Why are the people in the earth saying that, yo, he don't, why is he not doing this? Because the Lord was witness between you and the wife of your youth, to whom you have been faithless, though she is your companion and your wife by covenant. People need to really pay attention to this one right here. The Lord was witness between you and the wife of your youth, to whom you have been faithless, though she is your companion, your wife by covenant. Did he not make them one with a portion of the Spirit in their union? And what was the one God seeking? Godly offspring. So guard yourselves in spirit, and let none of you be faithless to the wife of your youth. For the man who does not love his wife, but divorces her, says the Lord, the God of Israel, covers his garment with violence, says the Lord of hosts. So guard yourselves in your spirit, and do not be faithless. He's talking about being faithless to someone. He's talking about being faithless to the covenant, right? Romans 7. Romans 7, 1. Or do you not know, brothers, for I am speaking to those who know the law, that the law is binding on a person only as long as he lives. For a married woman is bound by the law to her husband while he lives. But if her husband dies, she is released from the law of marriage. Accordingly, she will be called an adulteress if she leaves with another man while her husband is alive. But if her husband dies, she is free from the law. And if she marries another man, she is not an adulteress. What's going on here? Let's read. Likewise, my brothers, you also have died to the law. Wait. Where the husband dying? The law is the woman. Wait, read it again. Likewise, my brothers, you also have died to the law through the body of Christ. You die with Christ. The husband died. Who's the husband? Who's the woman? It's yourself. I don't know if people are getting this yet. You die with Christ. That's your old body being put away. That's the sins. That's the one who you was married to. You put that away. Now you gotta be married to someone else. What are you gonna be married to? That's the question. Who are you going to be? Who are you going to be married to? Who was released from? Who was released
Yeah,
from the law of marriage? You know.
yeah. I think what happened was, like, kind of Paul's view. If you look in Exodus, the 24th chapter, matter of fact, I'll just cut to the chase. If you look in Galatians, the 4th chapter, Paul says, ay, 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 ay. In verse 5, to redeem those that were under the law, that we might receive the adoption of sons. And because you are sons, God hath sent forth the Spirit of his Son into your hearts, crying, Abba, Father. Wherefore thou art no more a servant, but a son, and if a son, then an heir of God through Christ. Howbeit then, when you knew not God, you did service unto them which were by nature no gods. But now, after you have turned to God, or rather you have known of God, how turn you again to the weak and beggarly elements whereunto you desire to be in bondage? So,
Hey,
Paul, if you read him first, hold on real quick. If you look in 1 Timothy chapter 1, verse 8, it says, but we know that the law is good if a man use it lawfully. Knowing this, that the law is not made for a righteous man, but for the lawless and disobedient, for ungodly and for sinners. So basically, all the people that were consenting to this law, they were consenting to put away the old man, if you will, or that they would end the strife with God
Hey,
and enter into
Eliyahu.
a covenant. Because let me bring out this one text. I yield.
Go ahead.
Because in Hebrews chapter 7, it says in Hebrews chapter 7, and matter of fact, Hebrews 6, before it starts going into this covenant, it says in Hebrews 6, verse 13. For when God made promise to Abraham, because he could swear by no greater, he swore by himself, saying, surely blessing I will bless thee, and multiplying I will bless you. And so that after he had patiently endured, he obtained the promise. For men verily swear by the greater, and an oath for a confirmation is to end all strife. So basically, I'm going to read this out of another translation. It says, people will swear by someone greater than themselves that it is true, and the oath is supposed to guarantee that what is said is true by both parties, and so ends conflict and strife and any dispute from there on out. So the man who basically they were saying was going to be under the law to keep it was that carnal man. You see, the law is made for him. And they were basically joining into this covenant saying, all of what God has said, we will be obedient and do. But they weren't. And that's why Paul keeps talking about that old man, I think. But I yield there.
110%. But look at I'm really harping on this question here because it's really, look, verses 3. Accordingly, she will be called an adulteress if she lives with another man while her husband is alive. But if her husband dies, she is free from the law. And if she marries another, she is not an adulteress. If the husband dies, she's free from the law. Likewise, my brothers, you also have died to the law. You've died. We're not the woman. We've died to the law. We're the man. It says, so that you may belong to another, to him who has been raised from the dead, in order that we may bear fruit to God. You know, I believe this ending part should translate as this in reality. So that you may belong to the one who raised Jesus from the dead, in order that we may bear fruit to God. That's how I think it should be translated. But look at what law is Christ dying to? What law is Christ going against? What law are we going against when we die? And Eliyahu's right, it's the body of sin. To be married to who? To another? Who are we gonna be married to? You know? Um, Paul really does explain this in verses 5. For while we were living in the flesh, our sinful passions aroused by the law were worked in our members, bearing fruit to death. He explains what we're dying to 110%. But I want to take this. Why is he using this analogy of marriage? Okay, we're the man, we're married to a woman. This woman that we're married to is the incorrect woman to be married to. We shouldn't be married to this woman. This woman is sin. That's the woman we're married to. But we're married to this woman. So we got this law of marriage has to be disannulled. How is it going to be disannulled? You have to die. You see? Um, Now, why am I connecting this with Malachi 2? Malachi 2, who is God telling you to be faithful to? He's telling you to he's telling you to be faithful to the one who God was witness over. Be faithful to the woman that God witnessed over. The woman that you married and God was witness to. That's that covenant. That's that the part in Deuteronomy where it says